Yeah, there we are. My name is Jamal Thomas. This is Jamal Thomas Morning Show. It wasn't muted. The cord on the mic is a little dodgy. I'm gonna have to get a new mic. But welcome to the Jamal Thomas Morning Show. My name is Jamal Thomas. I am glad that you guys can join me for another episode. We are up to episode 156. We have met here for 156th time at this sacred place to have a conversation about news, politics, taking place internationally and domestic. There's a lot of big news, actually. And in some of the big news, I have to start at what is taking place in Istanbul. So we have the first images out of Istanbul that are showing. I will show this. I'll show this. Some of the first images that are out. Istanbul airport. Zelensky waiting, calling for Putin. Calling for Putin. Putin. Looking for Putin. Looking for Putin. Well, of course, Putin is not showing up because Putin never said he was going to show up. It is a negotiation, just like the first Istanbul agreements. Putin wasn't there in the first Istanbul agreements. Oftentimes you have delegations going to locations. What is happening is a propaganda diplomatic war. And what I mean by that is you have the European leaders coming together on Victory Day saying, we demand a 30-day ceasefire unconditionally. Okay, well, this was never going to be accepted. I would imagine every losing side in a conflict that is getting crushed, that is losing manpower, would want, on some level, a breather in that. Imagine a boxing match where the boxer's getting beat up and he's trying to just hold. He's just trying to hold out. And finally, the bell rings and he goes to his corner. He's like, that's what Europe and Zelensky wants. Russia, it's not going to give them that. They have no reason to give them that. It would not be in their best interest to give them that. Oh, there it is. It's not in their best interest to give them that. So they're not going to give them that. By the same token, though, they don't want to come across the Trump as if they're not open to negotiations. So what does Putin do? Putin says, Istanbul agreements 2.0. Let's pick up where we left off. Unconditionally, I will, or we will meet you. Now, when he's saying that, he's saying, my delegation will meet your delegation. Of course, this throws Europe into a tizzy, especially when Donald Trump comes out and immediately says, hey, good idea. That's a great idea. Donald Trump, approves. And Zelensky should go immediately. Now, initially, Zelensky was like, well, I'm not going unless there's a 30-day ceasefire. Russia was mum on that. They weren't going to even respond to it. And apparently pushing from Trump and European leaders said, you better go because you don't want to make Papa Trump angry. Regardless of this posturing that takes place, what Zelensky and what the European leaders know is that they can't carry it alone. They have no hard power. France's military got crushed within a day in the Second World War. They're nowhere near as good as they were even back then. They couldn't even field 20-some thousand troops, meaning Europe, if they needed to. So from the standpoint of them having any real role in this, they have none. They need and require the United States. They could be spoilers. They could gas Zelensky's head up to try to keep him, going. But in real terms, what they all know is that they need the United States. So all of this is propaganda and diplomacy in order to make it appear as if they're open to it in order to get Trump to continue to back one side or the other. From Putin's point, it's like, all right, let's have simple agreements. I don't want to have a ceasefire. I want to settle the conflict. I want to settle the root cause of this conflict. That is my goal. That is my objective. That was my stated objective in the very beginning. I'm sticking with my same objective. When Trump effectively says, hey, Putin doesn't want a ceasefire, he wants to end the war, well, it puts Zelensky in a corner and it puts Europe in a corner where despite the fact that they don't want to have an agreement, they don't want to have a ceasefire, they don't want to stop the war, they are forced, or they do want a ceasefire because they want to breathe it, but they don't want to stop the war. But Trump puts them in a corner where they have to go. So they drag their bodies to Istanbul. Now, the catch becomes, is anything going to come of these agreements, of the Istanbul talks? No. because the talks has nothing to do with real negotiations. Each side has their own rationale for being there. Zelensky is there because he's forced to be there. What he wants is a breather. What he doesn't want is to end the war. So he needs to make it at the very least appear to Donald Trump that he's open to talks. So Donald Trump won't just say, I'm done, I'm walking. Done. They're not serious. They're horrible people. We're walking. That is what Europe and what Zelensky is terrified of. And so Zelensky drags his body there. He bitches and moans and complains. Well, I want to talk to Putin face to face. Nobody said you were going to talk to Putin face to face. And so now he's there, apparently throwing a hissy fit, where instead of negotiations taking place in the morning like they were supposed to, they get pushed to the evening because Erdogan apparently has to talk to Zelensky like a child to get him and his team to negotiate. Russia didn't even send Lavrov. They sent head of the GRU. They sent the guy who was there before. They sent an entire team. And the reality of it is, from their point of view, we don't believe you're going to negotiate because we don't believe you really want to end the war. What we want is to know whether there's any room, any concessions, any ability to talk or not. Because from the Russian position, what they probably, I would imagine, I'm not there, but I would imagine rationally, considering Zelensky's behavior and actions, considering European leaders' behaviors and actions, what they know is Ukraine is losing on the battlefield badly. They're getting their people killed left and right. They have very little ability to defend at this point, meaning when we're pushing, we're continuously pushing. We have another army in reserve. We have another army that we built on the border of Finland. They are dragging 1,000 people a month off the street in order to press gang into a military where we have 30,000 people volunteering to join the military because of the benefits and people like a winning side. They can't keep this up. This is unsustainable. But just because they're on their feet, they believe that they can keep going. So what we need to do is continuously shoot one Ukrainian in the face, day in after day out, day in after day out, killing one Nazi at a time, until finally you get to the point where the Ukrainian military is weak enough, where it's about to collapse, and where they are either going to collapse, meaning it all falls apart, whether there's political turmoil because it falls apart, or whether there's an assessment of, okay, we need to come to terms because Russia is going to keep moving inexorably westward. Now, Europe doesn't care about Ukraine. I disagree with Macaris on this. Macaris thinks that Europe is getting bad information. I don't think they're getting bad information at all. I think they're getting accurate information. They see it, they're just lying, just like our leaders lie. And in that process of lying, they understand that the Ukrainian military at some point is going to collapse. What they're hoping is that Donald Trump continues to give them weapons and money to keep it going long enough for them to build up some level of industry, some level of military themselves, for them to drag people into some kind of militaristic process where they themselves can create this bulwark. And by the way, I suspect that's even Donald Trump's angle on some level, at the very least, not necessarily in context of the war, but in the context of having Europe to build up the military since the 5% expansion in NATO. We want to hand over this to Europe while we move over and deal with China, and we freeze the conflict along the lines that it's in. We allow Europe to come into Ukraine. We'll basically a de facto NATO, and that's what we want from the U.S. perspective. Okay, well, you're not going to get that. You're decisively not going to get that. My point is that from the European perspective, though, the reason that they're pushing Ukraine to keep going is not because they think Ukraine is winning or doing better, or even, I don't even believe that they believe Ukraine is even holding the line on some level. They can obviously see the battlefield moving inexorably westward. You only have to look at a map. No, what they need is for them to stay up just long enough and give us time. It's like a military maneuver, right? We need to get our men out. Okay. But in order to get our men out, we need somebody to stand there and fight, knowing it's a suicide mission while we get our other people out. Yes, the 10 men who are standing here are going to die, but the 200 men are going to survive because they're going to be able to get out alive while these 10 men hold the ground. The 10 men that we're talking about here is Ukraine. We want Ukrainians to fight and die to the last Ukrainians. Europe doesn't care about their lives any more than America cares about European lives. And in the same way that America is willing to feed Europe to the wood chipper of the Russian military, Europe is willing to feed Ukraine to the wood chipper of the Russian military while it believes it's going to build up something. Here's the catch. I think they're wrong. Not morally, morally, ethically, all that stuff, but they've been morally, ethically dubious forever. No. Politically, that requires stability to do that. Vladimir Putin has an 80% approval rating. He's stable. The economy, stable. The European economies are not stable. Those European economies have been falling apart. They've been deindustrialized. And on top of being deindustrialized, they're in massive debt. So you've given nearly $600 billion, meaning US and Europe, to Ukraine in a failed operation. On top of that, the money and the weapons that you've been buying has been coming from the US. The oil and gas, the LNG that you've been buying has been coming from the US. You've been paying 5 times more for the LNG. You've been paying ungodly amounts for the weapons. So you've had a situation where money, hundreds of billions of dollars, have been fleeing Europe and running across the Atlantic into the United States. Okay, there's that. On top of that, from the standpoint of the debt, as I pointed out, you guys have been going into massive debt. And on top of that, the reality of it is your businesses have been closing. Your economies have been taking a hit, while the Russian economy has moved into like the number 4th or 5th spot of strongest economies in the world. That's not good for political stability. So you get AfD, who was considered a Nazi party and radioactive, moving into like the number 2 spot in Germany. Okay, that's fascinating. Why? You get right-wing parties in Austria moving into the number 1 spot. Okay, that's interesting. Why? You get Marine Le Pen's party, National Rally, that was, again, radioactive at one point, literally winning the first round of the race with all sorts of horse trading necessary in order to keep it from winning outright. That's interesting. Why? They needed to take out Karlin Gorgescu because he was going to win in Romania. His main thing, we're not building that U.S. military base. Full stop. They got rid of them. That's interesting. Why did you have to do that? If Marine Le Pen ran, who they also had to get rid of using some kind of legal stuff, shenanigans, she would have most likely won. Her ward, however, will most likely win in the next election. Again, that's interesting. Why? I'm pointing out that you require a certain degree of political stability to accomplish the objectives that they seem to want to accomplish, feeding Ukraine into the wood chipper while they built up a military. It doesn't seem like it's going to work in the way that they think it's going to work. Nevertheless, Europe is there. Lindsey Graham is there. Kiev is there. Russia's there, all with their certain aims. None of them wanting to end the war, with maybe the exception of Donald Trump, who wants to end it on his terms, which means he doesn't or is not going to end the war. These talks are political intrigue, as Lavrov said. These talks are going to go nowhere. I want to bring in my guests. We're joined with the man himself, a fan, audience favorite, Patrick Henningsen. Patrick Henningsen, let me give you a bio. He is geopolitical analyst, journalist, host of the Sunday Wire, creator of 21st Century Wire, and all-around critic of mainstream media propaganda. Patrick, welcome to the show, man. How you doing today? You doing all right?
Yeah, pretty well. Great to be with you, Jamal.
Oh, man, it's always great to have you. I would like to show you something. So this, come on, my mouse is acting up. This took place yesterday in Saudi Arabia. This is Trump shaking hands with a head chopper. That hand that he's shaking, assuming he's right-handed, has been used to chop heads off and potentially even kill Americans. I want to also show you this clip. This is also Saudi Arabia talking about Syria now that the coup that has been taking place going all the way back to the George Bush administration, even more so under Obama, who gave billions of dollars to overthrow and destroy the Syrian government, on to Trump's administration, who openly said, we're stealing the oil, we're keeping the oil, we're keeping the oil. All of these things done in order to drain resources out of Syria, hundreds of billions of dollars to destroy the Syrian government. You finally got a group of jihadis backed by Turkey or Israel, US, etc., in order to finally, after decades, overthrow the Syrian government, putting in a head shopper jihadist president. This is Trump now that the coup is over with, saying, we're lifting sanctions.
Likewise, in Syria, which has seen so much misery and death, there is a new government that will hopefully succeed in stabilizing the country and keeping peace. That's what we want to see in Syria. They've had their share of travesty, war, killing, many years. That's why my administration has already taken the first steps toward restoring normal relations between the United States and Syria for the first time in more than a decade.
You know what's wild about that? He leaves out, hey, we were putting in sanctions. We were sending in jihadists. We were doing all of this stuff to destroy the government. And now he's like, all right, shaking his hand, normalizing relations. And by the way, that's while he is there talking about how Iran is bloodthirsty thugs creating terror in the Middle East. I saw your video on this. Give me your take.
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know where to start, Jamal. There's just so many different forms of wrong, from so many different angles. This is so ridiculous and so obscene and so disgusting on so many different levels. I don't even know where to begin. How do you analyze something that is just this completely? I don't really know what to say. It's let's just start with just the baseline lies. This is like, let me just give you a metaphor example. This is like if you are beating somebody on the ground and you're kicking them in the face, and then you just take your boot and you just grind their face into the concrete, and then stand back and say, "Oh, what a shame! Look at the devastation, and oh, this is just terrible violence here. Look at the blood coming out. They deserve better. They really deserve. This is so. We're going to, we're going to clean this up, and we're going to make you, whole again." Okay. This is just so disgusting, but this level of baseline lying is almost attached to each of these Middle Eastern countries. Okay. The United States is the reason why there has been devastation, starvation, why Syria has been strangled, because of Donald Trump himself in his first term. Donald Trump is the one that occupied Syria militarily. He continued and expanded sanctions on Syria in 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20. He continued to support Al-Qaeda, his government. Okay. He continued. What Donald Trump has done here in Saudi Arabia is he has completed the life's work of Hillary Clinton and John McCain in legitimizing Al-Qaeda, ISIS, and all of these Western and Gulf and Qatari-backed terrorist organizations, armed by the U.S., paid for by Qatar, supported by Saudi Arabia as well, even though they're supposed to be at odds with Qatar. But on this issue of Syria, all of these countries conspired. Turkey, the United States, Jordan, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, the UAE, Qatar. They all conspired to crush, to destroy, to destabilize, to ruin the country of Syria so that it would collapse from within. And it took them 14 years to do it. Okay. They hoped that they could do it quicker. They hoped that this would all have been wound up in 2013, and Giuliani would waltz into Damascus in 2013 and raise the black flag over Damascus. That was their hope, but it didn't happen because Syria, the Assad government, the Syrian Arab Army showed a lot more resilience. Russia came in to help them in October of 2015. Hezbollah came in to help them. The Iranian Quds forces came in to help them. And they managed to stave off a terrorist invasion. The backing was led by the United States. The United States provided the majority of the arms, the weapons, the TOW missiles, all of these things. And they provided intelligence support, much like they're providing to Ukraine. Donald Trump did a lot of that. while he was president. In fact, Donald Trump saved Giuliani. Giuliani was pinned down in 2018. There was a counteroffensive that was being launched by the Syrian Arab Army there at the borders of Idlib. And Trump boasted about this in 2019. He boasted publicly. I played the clip yesterday on my show. And he said, oh, we can't let Syria go in and kill 3 million people in Idlib. The city of Idlib with 3 million people. There's no such place in Syria. There's no city of Idlib with 3 million people. There may be normally 3 million within the province under normal times, but it was much less at that time. But there was a counteroffensive because Trump admitted there are 30,000 terrorists in Idlib. And he stopped them from being crushed. What he did was very clever. They threatened Syria through back channels with bombing everything you can imagine in Syria. Plus, they managed to promise that Turkey would come in to mediate and to take care of, quote, take care of the terrorist problem in Idlib. Of course, Turkey never did that. What Turkey did was backstop and strengthen HTS and al-Nusra in Idlib and Giuliani in Idlib because they were all on the same page. They wanted to overthrow the government in Damascus. And they eventually did in December of 2024. Just took them a whole lot longer. So Trump is continuing Hillary Clinton, continuing John McCain. Trump became the ultimate neocon this week. Trump became the ultimate neocon in the great tradition of George Bush, of Hillary Clinton, of John McCain, waving the Saudi sword, doing all the performative Gulf monarchy, worshiping at the altar of oil and gas money, and saying all this, extolling all these great virtues about the Middle East and and this is their people of the Middle East are charting their own destiny. Meanwhile, U.S. bombs are being dropped by Israelis out of U.S. planes and slaughtering Arab babies, women, doctors. They're bombing hospitals this week. As Trump was on stage, they're bombing. Israel was destroying a hospital, one of the last working European International Hospital in Gaza. Okay, so what the hell is he talking about? Then he goes on in this speech. It's so full of comedy gold, black comedy, dark comedy gold. He goes and says, "Oh, the Iranians. Oh, look at Iran. They don't have any of the skyscrapers that you have in Abu Dhabi and Riyadh, and because they've been stealing from their people, the mullahs are corrupt, and Iran has been under sanctions for 25 years. That's why the development has been stymied in Iran. Okay, they've been under crippling maximum pressure sanctions, increasing over a 25-year period. Actually, technically longer than that, if you count all of the sanctions back to the 1980s. So, but Iran has something that Saudi doesn't have. Iran has a space program. Iran has world-leading advances in nuclear energy, helium processing, all sorts of engineering, where they're top of the league tables. Radioactive isotopes for medical use. Iran leads in all of these. Iran produces more engineers. Iran produces more female engineers every year and STEM graduates than the whole of Saudi Arabia. Okay, and the whole of the Middle East, quite frankly. Yeah. They're miles ahead in education, literacy, everything, despite being under U.S. sanctions designed to crush the economy, designed to crush the society. And it's a bit rich for a U.S. president to go up there in front of Gulf Arabs. And he's only there to pander for the cash. Let's be clear, okay? And then blaming somebody that they've been trying to crush, and then lying about Iran being the state sponsor of terror, while Trump himself sits there and endorses the head of Al-Qaeda in Syria, former Baghdadi deputy, former #2 ISIS. Trump, that was the ultimate humiliation for Americans, okay? So he's either too stupid to know who he's actually shaking hands with and how many Americans he's chopped the heads off of, from Ken Bigley to Steven Sotloff and all these others, plus all the Druze that he's slaughtered, plus all the Alawites, plus all the Christians, the Shiites, and the Sunnis that Giuliani has slaughtered. Okay, everybody. He's done everybody in the region except for Israel. al-Jilani, al-Sharar, as he's called. It's so rich. And then Trump goes on stage and continues to lie. And he says, oh, how they're treating these people in Gaza, the prison, the hostages in Gaza, these people, and he's talking about Hamas or the Palestinians, like they're torturing, raping anybody. There's no evidence that they have done any of that. But there's ample evidence, according to Israeli press and Israeli court cases, that Israel is torturing, raping, killing, murdering, starving Palestinian hostages, kidnapped off the street, 9,000 of them. 9,000 of them.
It's on
They
video.
don't exist. They've been wiped out. They've been othered. They've been disappeared from the conversation. So what the hell is Donald Trump, President Trump, talking about? I cannot work it out. What world is he in? He's and then the Gulf Arabs are sitting there clapping, and Elon Musk is in the background like this. It's like the Hunger Games. And then Jamal, I'm sorry, but I have to round this one
No,
off.
please go for it. I set you up for it. I wanted you to go for it. I wanted you to give me your take.
So here's the piece de la resistance of the whole sick cabaret in Riyadh. That Trump wheels out Pete Hegseth, the defense secretary, who's sitting there right behind Mohammed bin Salman. And on his right bicep, he has a tattoo in Arabic that says infidel under his Armani suit. Okay. Openly hostile towards Muslims, insulting, hates them. And then proselytize publicly for building a third temple on top of Al-Aqsa Mosque.
Yep.
So that shows you the Saudis either are completely clueless and stupid about who they're holding court with. And then Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, is 2 chairs over behind MBS. And these are people that were rabidly cheering on the genocide of Arabs in the region. That's who Saudi is holding court with in Riyadh in front of the world. That's who Donald Trump brought. So you have all Zionists, people, mass murderers, openly hostile towards Muslims, hating Muslims, and they're inviting them in. And then Trump's there begging for $1 trillion in direct foreign investment, like literally begging for the cash from the Arabs. It's disgusting. So there's zero morals, all transactions, all about money, fake, lying, clout, illusions, facade. Nothing corresponds at all to reality. The only thing that was real in there was the groveling for foreign money. Yeah, because he needs that cash injection into Wall Street. He needs the liquidity from Saudi, the UAE, and Qatar to rescue the U.S. economy, which Trump is doing a pretty damn good job of wrecking right now through his trade wars and all these other, and then running scams on the side, whether it's crypto coins, rugging people with Trump coins, or the new stable coins that him and Elon and everybody else are running for themselves, so that they build the baseline of the wealth, so that they're the next Rockefeller class for the next 100 years, and to hell with everybody else who's not in the inner circle. Sorry, we'll give you a little bite, but later, after we have established the base. The ground level of this new, quote, economy. That's what these people are doing. I hate to say it, I hate to spell it out, but that's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. And then supporting terrorists, endorsing, giving credibility to a Al-Qaeda head chopping terrorist. Yeah. Which Donald Trump, and shaking his hands and then blowing smoke up the tailpipe of Al-Qaeda, saying what a good-looking man he is.
Oh, I have
what an attractive young man, and he has a very strong past.
Right here,
very strong. You mean a terrorist past? Play it. Go ahead and play it.
Past chopping off the heads of Americans. Yeah, right here. This is Trump on airplane. I'm not the Qatari one. Airplane one. Listen to what he says. Air Force One.
How did you find the Syrian president?
Great. I think very good. Young, attractive guy, tough guy. Strong pass. Very strong pass fighter.
Does that worry you?
But he's got a real shot at pulling it together.
How did you
think about that. I mean, he's talking about an ISIS fighter, a guy who was, as you
Leader.
pointed out, part of ISIS.
Leader.
Yeah, ISIS leader, part of Al Qaeda at one point. I mean, whatever these interchangeable names, leader of Al Qaeda, chop off heads. There's even video of like buses of kids where they're indoctrinating. That's the guy who he's shaking hands with. That's the guy he's a good looking guy, strong pass. It's the strong pass part that makes it even worse because his pass is very clear to anybody that wants to look into who this guy is. I agree with everything you said that came out of your mouth. You're absolutely right.
It's it's a slap in the face.
It
Okay.
is.
It's a slap in the face to every U.S. serviceman who died or was injured or who had a family member or knew someone who died being forced into this stupid war on terror. Okay. Now, I've been protesting the war on terror, saying what a fool's errand and a disaster it's been since day one. Okay. Since 2001. Okay. I've been very vocal publicly and active on that front, saying this is a fabricated enemy. This is a fabricated facade of a fabled enemy that's been created by Israel, the United States, and their allies in order to justify major geopolitical aims and domination in Central
That's right.
Asia and the Middle East and so forth, and also to clamp down on our rights and personal liberties at home through the Patriot Act and NSA spying and all the things that Ed Snowden exposed in his leaks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. I've been very vocal about that. But even then, still the US government pushed men and women up to the front lines and sacrificed them under the banner of the war on terror. And Donald Trump has just slapped them all across the face, saying, screw you, you died for nothing. I'm going to make a mockery of you, your family, and everybody else who fought under this absolute lie. And here I am. I'm going to endorse the leader of Al Qaeda and the deputy of ISIS.
Yeah.
He's still a terrorist. While Trump was with him, they were celebrating in Syria and slaughtering Alawites and Christians as they did that meeting this week.
Yep.
And here's another one. It just gets better, Jamal. Celebrations in the ISIS prisons in northeastern Syria.
Yes.
The Kurds have been guarding 9,000 of the hardcore ISIS fighters in northeastern Syria in Hakasa in these areas, okay? Now, the SDF, Kurdish forces and whatnot, the U.S. has been using them as a sort of major chess piece, of course, in order to keep Syria off balance and unstable and to justify the U.S. military occupation. Fine. But we're in a new chapter now. And what Trump did, and Saudi Arabia, is he just gave the green light to Jolani, aka al-Sharar, aka quote president, the president with no parliament that's never been elected. It's not a president. It's an insult to call him a president. And it's the first time a U.S. statesperson has recognized a military junta as a head of state before that interim government ever announced elections. So this is a big break from U.S. policy, like they're doing with Zelensky, suspending any expectation of democracy. But that said, he's just given Jolani the green light to take over those prisons now. What's going to happen to those ISIS fighters? Are they going to be released? Is there going to be a magical jailbreak? Or are they going to slowly be given amnesty? Whichever those three possibilities are, Jamal, it almost guarantees U.S. military presence in Syria indefinitely. And certainly that's what the neocons want. That's what Trump is going to get. And that's what Israel is quite happy with at the moment as well. Because the U.S. wants Syria broken up into smaller pieces. Turkey wants a piece of Syria. They want it broken up. Israel definitely wants it broken up into minimum 3 states. Minimum. And the Gulf Arabs, definitely they wouldn't mind. It would be much easier to manage Syria if it was a quarter of the size of its current form with 3 or 4 useless statelets that will never provide any challenge to anybody or anything, and ideally to get them to fight each other at some point and create sectarian, maybe have a civil war or two, and then go in, and then some glass towers in Damascus, some glass towers in Aleppo with Gulf money. And all the while this is going on, ethnically cleansing and killing the Romanian Palestinian population.
Yep.
All done with the blessing of Saudi Arabia, the blessing of Qatar, and the blessing of all the Gulf states, and of course, to the great gratitude of the state of Israel, that would like nothing more than to get rid of the native Palestinian population. And they're going to use the United States and indirectly potentially use the Gulf to make that happen, all to create progress in the region. So they'll use the crisis that they have created, this genocide in Gaza, that's created such toxicity, that's created such an overboil of problems in the region, so much so it's become an impediment to global capital to come to rush into the region. And they're all, including the Saudis and everybody else, they'll throw their fellow Arabs, which they probably don't even consider as real Arabs.
They don't care.
They consider themselves as real Arabs, but those people in the Levant, not really. They're not us. So they'll throw them under the bus. We'll push them over there. We'll put them in northeastern Syria. Jolani will create a little enclave for them up in, and we'll stick them with the Kurds up in the desert in northeastern Syria, out of the way, and then push the rest into Egypt, and Jordan will take a few, and whoever doesn't want to leave, we'll just crush them. We'll kill them. That's Israel's plan. Israel has declared total warfare on Gaza, and I've not seen any protest coming from Washington. All this spat between supposedly, Trump and Netanyahu on the outs. Well, I don't see the U.S. pushing back on anything Israel's been doing, undermining this so-called ceasefire that Trump got all this credit for, that Steve Witkoff got all this credit for in the first couple of weeks. That thing was over so quick. And now they want to finish the job in Gaza, which is destroy every last inhabitable building, every last hospital, everything. They want to get rid of them. They want to make it unlivable. And then Trump will do one of his speeches. He'll go back to Riyadh or Doha and say, there's been such terrible devastation in Gaza, and no one deserves to live like that. Look at all the rubble. Isn't that a shame?
Yeah.
Isn't that so sad? Well, these people deserve better.
Yeah.
After we've pummeled them and after we've crushed them, let's build them some nice apartments somewhere in the desert. There's plenty of space in Jordan. Or send them to Algeria or something. We'll build some lovely, beautiful, wonderful apartments, Trump will say, with little water features and maybe a golf course. We'll teach these Arabs how to play golf, and this will be one. It's going to be great. It's how obscene, how absolutely base, unseen this all is, and the lies have just reached such epic. The hypocrisy is reaching such epic proportions. And if people can't see the absolute lie, the hypocrisy, the absolute departure from civilization that we are witnessing right now, and Donald Trump is the mascot for it. He is the man to show and to finally deliver the epiphany. If you haven't received the epiphany yet, it'll be coming soon. And if you don't think it can get worse, this can't get any worse. Trust me, this can get a lot worse.
Yeah.
This can get because the Arabs, the Gulf states have Trump over a barrel now. They promised 2.4 or 3 trillion in direct foreign investment between Qatar, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia. Okay. But they've also said, we want stability. We want an Iran nuclear agreement. We want all of these things. If Trump doesn't come quick with an Iran deal, Israel could basically throw this whole narrative into turmoil with one move. And then Trump will be back to zero. In fact, less than zero at that point. Nothing you saw this week, Jamal, is set in stone.
Patrick, I will go further. I don't even know if that's not the original plan. I mean, look, I'll give you an example. Trump is supposedly in the negotiations with Iran. And yet, when he's out giving a speech, he's saying,
When I left
Yes.
office, the only thing still standing between this region and its unbelievable potential was a small group of rogue actors and violent thugs seeking constantly to drag the Middle East backward and into havoc, mayhem, and indeed into war. Unfortunately, instead of confronting these destructive forces, the last U.S. administration chose to enrich them and empower them and give them billions and billions of dollars. The Biden administration, the worst administration in the history of our country, by the way, spurned our most trusted and longstanding Gulf partners, and I can say partners worldwide. One of our great
What's he talking
in
about?
the middle of negotiations, supposedly, quote unquote, with Iran, while he is completely attacking Iran. I mean, it wasn't just that. Let's look for the other clip where he is just,
He's sanctioning. They put all new sanctions on Iran this week.
yep.
So he's
Yes, they
insulting
have.
them. He's insulting them in front of the king of Saudi Arabia and the world, and they're sanctioning Iran while
Yep.
he's supposedly trying to do. So he's clearly undermining any goodwill. Clearly, he is U.S. president. He himself. He's taking the lead in undermining the goodwill of any negotiations. He's undermining his buddy Steve Witkoff, which shows you, Jamal, that maybe they don't want a deal.
Exactly.
Look like
Which
it.
is, that is exactly my point. Like, I've been presenting this white hat and black hat version, that this kind of WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get, of, okay, Trump is trying to get a deal. Trump is trying to do this. Trump is at odds with Netanyahu. But then when you go to Saudi Arabia and you're saying stuff like this in the middle of negotiations, by the way, when he was trying to negotiate with Russia and they would try to prod him to attack Russia, he wouldn't do it. Why? Because he was in the middle of negotiations that he wanted to work. And he knows that if you're attacking the people that you're trying to negotiate with, you're not going to get that far with it. Trump is taking maximalist demands for Iran that he knows is already a red line. And so you're stuck with this thing of, okay, well, does he really actually want a deal? He went there and even said, "Thus, here's another clip of him."
While the Arab states have focused on becoming pillars of regional stability and world commerce, Iran's leaders have focused on stealing their people's wealth to fund terror and bloodshed abroad.
Like, what do you do with that, right? What do you do with it?
Terror and bloodshed abroad? What is he talking about? Hezbollah?
I thought he was talking about Israel at first.
Oh, yeah.
I thought he was talking about Israel. I mean, everything that he said there could easily be put at Israel. A band of thugs that Biden has been giving money to that has been committing terrorism in various countries abroad.
What's he talking about? A band of thugs? Who?
Yeah.
What is it? Al Qaeda in Syria that Biden's giving money to because you just shook hands with their leader and just endorsed him? So is it that? Trump's very clever. He's very clever and very dishonest and very deceptive. He tells stories without naming names, and he leaves innuendo into a gray area while he's in flow of his speech. So it could mean three different things potentially, but it's never definitive. He just kind of drifts it out there without being specific. And you could blame somebody. It could mean this. It could mean that. I mean, he could mean Hezbollah there. Hezbollah is the South Lebanese local defense force defending South Lebanon from the Israeli army. That's what Hezbollah is. And they weren't doing terrorism in Syria. Hezbollah was fighting ISIS in Syria at the invitation of the Assad government. Just like the Quds forces from Iran were fighting ISIS and al-Nusra and Jolani in Syria. They were fighting al-Qaeda. That's what the U.S. claims that they're doing in the Middle East, in Iraq, in Syria, is we're here to fight ISIS. But they do nothing on the ground to fight ISIS. Iran Quds forces, Iraqi Hashd al-Shabi PMUs, they fought ISIS on the ground. They took casualties on the ground. They dealt ISIS huge, the majority, all of ISIS's ground casualties were at the hands of Iraqi PMUs, Iranian Quds forces, and Hezbollah, not the United States. The United States didn't get involved in that. They just did air sorties hitting empty warehouses and leveling Mosul and Raqqa and killing tens of thousands of civilians in the process, much like Israel is doing in Gaza, much like the U.S. did in Fallujah. Okay, that's what they did to fight ISIS. They didn't do any of the heavy lifting, nothing. In fact, they moved ISIS around strategically in Syria. And truth be known, Israel and the U.S. were ISIS and al-Qaeda's air force in Syria. They attacked Russian forces that were fighting ISIS. They attacked Syrian Arab army positions, as Israel did many times. Israel probably played really the de facto role of al-Qaeda and ISIS's air force in the last, 12 years, 14 years in Syria. That's beyond any doubt. And the excuse Israel used was, we're hitting Iranian and Hezbollah forces there because this is a security issue for Israel. No, it's not. You can now see everything that was done between the United States, Turkey, Israel, all of the NATO partners, all the Gulf states. Everything was done in a coordinated fashion, and Jordan, to weaken, to destroy, to undermine, and ultimately to topple the government in Syria and have the state collapse in order to get the strategic objectives that Israel has achieved already since December, which is very, very clear for everybody to see. They stole the Golan Heights, Mount Hermon. They have strategic artillery fire over Damascus. They have strategic height over South Lebanon, and they're building a corridor through the Druze enclaves right up to Iraqi Kurdistan. And as Israel is allied with Iraqi Kurdistan, that will give them a clear path to attack Iran as and when they wish. And the U.S. will facilitate that. And that's probably why the U.S. is there as well militarily. That's why they're staying there, to help Israel achieve that goal strategically. So there's no getting around any of this. But there's another clip, Jamal, where Trump says, we hate seeing the countries in this region bomb each other. We want it to stop. We don't like that. That's after Donald Trump just got done bombing Yemen for 7 straight weeks, just last week. What the hell is he talking about? The U.S. is bombing countries in the Middle East. The Arabs aren't bombing each other. The United States and Israel are bombing countries. Israel's bombing Lebanon. Israel's bombing Iraq. Israel's bombing Syria. Israel hasn't bombed Egypt yet, but give them a week. The United States has bombed Yemen. The United States has armed Saudi Arabia to bomb Yemen from March 2015 all the way to 2022, 7 years of a proxy war that was at the behest of the United States, supplied by the United States, and done by the UAE, Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia. Okay, so Trump is up there just making up his own version of reality that, these Arabs just can't stop killing each other. We're here to bring peace to the region. No, he just got done bombing Saudi's own neighbor, Yemen, for 7 straight weeks. They emptied out the U.S. arsenal, and then the U.S. basically cut and run because they were losing too many FA-18 Super Hornets, too many Reaper drones, and the Harry S. Truman's damaged, apparently. So Pete Hegseth just presided over the biggest train wreck in modern U.S. military history, and he's sitting there with his infidel tattoo in Riyadh, festooning around as our, quote, defense secretary. This whole thing is a circus. It's one epic failure and a humiliation after another. But lots of great rhetoric, great speeches. Everybody's Elon in the background, like this. It was like the Hunger Games. I mean, it's disgusting. Elon's openly hostile against Muslims on X, and racist, and promoting hostility with his 200 million plus follower account. You got Hegseth there, hates Muslims. You got Howard Lutnick, arch Zionist, cheering on a genocide, who announced We need to crush jihad at the Madison Square Garden Trump rally. That was Lutnick. They're all sitting there with the Saudis. One big happy family. It just shows you the level of corruption. This whole thing, it's nothing means anything to these people.
Hunger Games is a really good example. Hunger Games is a really good example. I know the clip that you're talking about because it infuriated me when I heard it, and I responded to somebody because they were like, "Oh my God, this is Donald Trump's announcing his new vision for global politics," and I flipped out. I was like, "Are you out of your mind? He's just been killing, all like bombing Yemen, like as you pointed out, for all of these weeks. They've been paying for a genocide. At which point did he have this quote unquote new world view of peace?" This is the clip that you're talking about. It's outrageous.
Before our eyes, a new generation of leaders is transcending the ancient conflicts of tired divisions of the past and forging a future where the Middle East is defined by commerce, not chaos, where it exports technology, not terrorism, and where people of different nations, religions, and creeds are building cities together, not bombing each other out of existence. We don't want that.
Applaud that nonsense like lemmings. You're absolutely right. It does put you in the mind of Hunger Games, where
A new generation of leaders, Jamal.
Yeah.
What are we talking about? Theocratic autocrats,
theocracies. Yeah, that's what he's talking about.
oil monarchs, and terrorists.
Yeah.
Is that the new generation of leaders? Al Qaeda leaders that you're sitting there boosting, Donald Trump?
Yeah.
What a slap in the face to America. I
And
mean,
they're
it's
just out
really,
there applauding.
it's such a
Plus-
humiliation. So it just shows you the people advising him and him himself are either so clueless or they're so corrupt.
I think they're sociopaths. I think they don't. I think they're amoral to any
They
notion
don't
of ethics, moral. I don't think they care. And just think, Tulsi Gabbard, who ran the campaign saying, "Look, we need to stop bombing in the Middle East. We're supporting terrorists," and her president, that she now backs and pushes for, is shaking the hand of an ISIS leader.
Yeah. And
Isn't that amazing?
you won't hear a word from Tulsi.
Nope.
She'll keep her mouth shut.
Nope.
She'll be a good soldier because Tulsi, it seems to me, and she probably said, "Oh, I'm staying in here," and her supporters will say, "Oh, she's staying in there despite how crazy Trump is because she can do some good from the inside." Okay, maybe so, but her silence is effectively her silence on these fundamental issues is hugely damaging because she's endorsing, by her silence, she endorses everything that Trump says, which goes against basic principles and civilization, 20th modern civilization, full stop. This is what's at stake, is the credibility of Western civilization. That's what's happening in Gaza. Make no mistake about it.
That's gone, Patrick.
I'll give you look at, you got the United States backing Israel to the hilt and attacking people who are protesting a genocide, deporting students who are protesting a genocide. You have the UK backing Israel to the hilt, no questions, no reservations, unconditionally. You have France been doing the same militarily, and Germany, the third biggest provider of military aid to Israel, are aggressively arresting people protesting this in Berlin, raiding people's homes for social media posts critical of Israel. Germany, okay? You'd think Germany had learned the lessons of history, okay? But they're so ensconced in their national guilt, okay? They're so ensconced in their national guilt and this narrative in Germany. It's so toxic for their society now that they feel they have to back Israel because of the history of the Holocaust, and they have to do this to atone for their historical guilt. And the Germans, who are the top country in Europe, are willing to atone for their historical guilt, to atone right down to the last Palestinian life. So what does that tell you about Western civilization? If Europe is the titular head of Western civilization, then this is proof that Western civilization is a total failure.
Their
At least
credibility.
the post-World War II, liberal world order, liberal international world order is a total failure. The Genocide Convention, the Geneva Convention, the United Nations, the Human Rights Council, all
OPCW.
UNICEF, all of these things constructed to prevent the crime of all crimes, genocide. Not only useless, but these countries, these post-World War II leaders of Western civilization are attacking dissenters, trying to stop the crime of crimes.
Yes.
So on every level, it's a failure. And they wonder why people are losing faith in institutions. And they say, oh, and our government's answer to that is more censorship, is more regulation, is more speech control, is more deplatforming, more centralization of power. That's their reaction to it. That's their reflex to it. It's a complete failure. And where we don't have one leader to speak of, save but maybe a couple somewhere, maybe a few positive voices we're hearing in Ireland or some countries.
Spain, Pedro, I forget
a little bit in Spain. And everybody is just completely browbeaten into this compliance position and so corrupt and unbelievable. So,
Patrick, everything that has come out of your mouth today has been God's truth. It really has. There's nothing to add to it. I mean, you're absolutely right. You said losing credibility. You mean lost credibility. We've paid for that. In the United States, 70% of what Israel was using, we paid for. That was under Joe Biden, even more under Donald Trump. And as you point out, as he's making the speech, as people are clapping, as he's talking about Iran, he's talking about Hamas, he's ignoring the fact that Israel has just murdered over 100,000 people, 2/3 of which are women and children. And Netanyahu was going out, giving his own speech, while Trump was giving a speech saying, this is all out war, this war is not stopping, we're going to kick them out, they're not coming back, we're going to destroy all of the buildings, we're going to do all of this stuff. Effectively, we are flattening this place. We're bombing hospitals. We're starving them because we don't want them to come back. If you feed them, they may come back. If you have a hospital, they may come back. We don't want them to. That's the entire goal. That's the entire point. You're 1,000% correct.
Those lives, and just even giving lip service to decency, that used to mean something. It really used to. Even Joe Biden, as senile and absent-minded as Joe Biden was, okay, and Trump's always the worst president in the history of the United States. Maybe that's true, but even Joe Biden wouldn't platform the leader of Al Qaeda. But Donald Trump would. Donald Trump would. And that really, people should think about that. Think about that. Where is Trump morally? Where is he ethically? Does he care about anything? Or is this just all a big, like, it's a show. He's more absent-minded than Biden, or either that or he's so morally vacuous that he is the epitome of pure, unadulterated corruption. I think he's
more vacuous, frankly. Patrick Henningsen, man, fantastic spot, man. Thank you for this. Geopolitical analyst, journalist, host of the Sunday Wire, creator of 21st Century Wire, critic of mainstream media propaganda. Check him out. This is just the taste of Patrick. Thank you for this, man. Damn good spot. I appreciate you.
All right. Take care, Jamal.
You have a good one. Be safe. There is other news afoot, and I want to bring in my guests to go into it because it is completely disastrous what some of these tiny countries are trying to do. Daniel Lazare, my man, Daniel Lazare, he's an independent journalist, author, best known as a critic of the U.S. Constitution, American politics, government, and social policy in general. He has written several books: Frozen Republic, Velvet Coup, America's Undeclared War. Daniel, welcome to the show, man. You doing okay today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good. A bit disturbed by what tiny countries, Estonia, for one, is trying to do, stuff that Macron is saying. But just for the audience may not know this. So Estonia has been trying to capture Russian ships. Now, in this one particular thing, Russia has started to guard those ships. And there was rumors that Russia was sending out their own war vessels in order to escort their ships. This took place, I believe it was yesterday, where Estonia is literally in open waters, by the way. These are not in Estonian waters. These are open waters, trying to get this ship to come in to their port. Basically, they're trying to steal the ship, to pirate a ship. The only thing that stopped it was because of a Russian fighter aircraft flying over, making it clear, basically, we will destroy you if you try to go after the ship, if you try to actually take the ship. The ship ignored the demands. It kept going. At one point, apparently, they were trying to board the ship. The ship wouldn't allow it. And when the Russian fighter craft came in, they backed off. They are, man, if this is not brinksmanship, I don't know what is. Daniel, what is going on with this? This seems insane to me.
Yeah, it's very bad. Essentially, NATO is making tentative stabs at imposing a naval blockade on Russia. Estonia, which by the way has less than 1.4 million people. That's less than the population of Manhattan.
I know.
Is part of NATO, and at NATO's behest, they have made certain efforts at cutting off maritime traffic to Russia via the Baltic, and so they tried to halt this ship, this oil tanker, which is neutrally flagged, and Russia interceded, sent a fighter jet to make known its displeasure and to threaten repercussions if Estonia went ahead with this attempted interception. But NATO is playing a very dangerous game. Imposing a naval blockade is
Act of war.
Yeah. I mean, it reminds me of the naval blockade that Egypt imposed on the Gulf of Aqaba in 1967, which triggered the 6-Day War. So they shouldn't do that. They shouldn't go there. Their policy is failing, and it's a no-win situation that can only lead to a serious confrontation.
By the way, if Russia attacked that ship, Article 5 wouldn't necessarily apply. Estonia was the problem. I mean, now mind you, NATO might have ignored that and just still went with it, but that would have been Estonia attacking a ship in open waters, not Russia attacking a NATO country.
Well, I mean, if NATO had attacked Estonia, you mean? I mean, if Russia had attacked
that ship,
Estonia, right? The ship trying to cut off the oil tanker.
Exactly.
No, it would escalate very rapidly and very dangerously,
Yes.
and and it's very foolish. Because these oil sanctions aren't working, they really can't work. So they're an empty gesture whose only purpose is to raise military tension. Now, the war in the Ukraine is turning into a disaster for everybody. It's a trap, and from which no one can escape.
That's what it seems like that way at this point, doesn't it?
Yeah, not the Ukraine, not NATO, not the U.S., and not Russia. I mean, it's a black hole that is dragging the rest of the world in. This is how wars spread, how they deepen, how they fester, and how they infest the surrounding neighborhood.
I want to show you another clip. Speaking of how it drags other countries into it, Europe clearly doesn't want the war to stop, and I have my own reason for that. In fact, before I even show this clip, I want to get your take on it. From my point of view, Europe doesn't really care about Ukraine any more than the U.S. cares about Ukraine. And from Europe's point of view, the United States wants Europe to increase its military stockpiles. They want them to try to build up their military industries. We want to move to the Pacific, so we want to deal with China. and say, okay, we want to freeze the conflict. We want to put European troops into whatever's left of Ukraine. And while we deal with China, we want you all to effectively deal with Russia, meaning global domination, with the United States handing off responsibilities in kind of the way that the Roman Empire, as it was collapsing, started bringing in other groups and other mercenaries and whatnot, because they couldn't necessarily do it on their own. They had expanded too much. Pursuant to this, Macron comes out and says the quiet part out loud. Again, all of this stuff kills any negotiation or deal that could take place. He is, I'm not going to entire political clip, I'm just showing it, but he is saying in this clip that we can't leave Ukraine alone since it will not join NATO. We are offering alternate guarantees. He wants to place troops at strategic points in Ukraine. And so it's like Russia's already said, this is a deal breaker. Anybody that is going into Ukraine is fair game, including Europe, if that's indeed what you're going to do. And yet you have Macron saying this aloud, even countering at one point saying, hey, maybe we should put nukes in Ukraine since the United States doesn't want to do it.
It's an example of how this is a no-win, all-lose situation. The war in the Ukraine is frozen. Russia's progress appears to have stalled. Drones are
Wait a minute, Daniel, that is not true. Russia has literally built 2 additional militaries, one at the border of Finland and another one reserved with all new equipment. They've been pushing and taking territory day after day. I've been following the battleground stats each day. Every day there's another village that falls. Every day there's a reason that Zelensky is screaming for a 30-day ceasefire, is because Russia's getting 30,000 people a month who's volunteering, whereas they're dragging people off the streets, people coming out of stores, people with their dogs, just throwing them in the vans. There's a clear difference in tenor between these two powers.
Yes, I agree with that. I agree with that. But however, I do think it's true that Russia's advances have slowed, and that I think that drone warfare is devastatingly effective. Drones are the most powerful military revolution since the invention of the AK-47 back in 1946.
It's a new method of warfare.
The new method of warfare is devastatingly effective, very difficult to counter, and I think my impression is that Russian advances are decelerating. But that just means that the more frozen, the more those lines harden, the plainer it becomes that there can be absolutely no peace without territorial concessions on the part of the Ukraine. Yeah. That is simply a fact. And that is a fact that no one in the West wants to face. And a fact that Zelensky really can't face, because if he does agree to that even in principle, the Azov battalion will hang him from the nearest lamppost.
They will
string him up. And and with a sign around his neck saying "Death to Jews," because Azov is a neo-Nazi battalion. Now, but Ukraine is never going to get the Crimea back. I mean, this is just painfully obvious. It's never going to get to Donetsk and Luhansk back either. So this should be the starting point for negotiations, but it's one the West can't face. So therefore, this war will fester for a long time. The war, there's probably peace talks or peace talk progress has actually regressed since Trump took office. Both sides' positions have hardened. So not only has Trump made no progress in bringing peace to that area, he's actually losing ground.
What do you think of him, by the way, in regard? Do you think he legit wants a peace deal? Because the peace deal he's been offering is absurd. Like the notion that the U.S. is going to occupy Zaporozhye nuclear power plant when it's, from Russians' point of view, part of their part of the Russian Federation is outrageous. Like some of the I don't know who is advising him. I don't know who is giving him advice on this, but the stuff that he's asked for is outrageous. The Kellogg plan, for example, where Kellogg is like, yeah, we're going to have European troops, effectively NATO troops, in Ukraine, which is, as Napoleon Part 2 has just said, is a de facto NATO. What he is putting forward is outrageous, considering from the Russian point of view, Ukraine will collapse if we keep going. We're just going to keep attriting them away until the point where their military collapses. That's what we're going to do. That's our plan.
Well, after 100 days, I think we're all getting a little more used to Donald Trump. It's like being locked in a bad marriage, and we're starting to be able to read his mind, and no one knows what his real positions are. Yeah. Yes, I do believe that Trump would like to end the war. I really do. So he could concentrate on other matters. I think Trump recognizes this war as a no-win proposition. He wants to get out. I think he feels a great deal of sympathy for Putin, politically and ideologically, and even personally. And I think that he definitely would like to settle this war. But he's making no progress. The funny thing is that I don't think Trump likes war. I mean, he just finished bombing the Houthis for 30 days, got nowhere, lost a bunch of MQ-9 Reaper drones, lost 2 F-18 Super Hornets, which got washed overboard. And then at the end of it, he says, okay, I declare, victory, let's get out. So I don't think he really wants war. I don't think Trump really is all about war. Trump is all about making deals and securing the U.S. and also making private deals that are turning the Trump brand into the most successful brand in the history of the world. And Trump wants to rake in money personally. I mean, this is corruption raised to a new dimension.
Yeah, the crypto thing, it's just an outright scam. Like the crypto, oh man, the money that his kids are making. And then it's like, yeah, I'm going to invest in crypto and I'm going to now bring the US government into crypto to stabilize the crypto market. So, okay, so you're now investing into something and then you're using the US government to effectively stabilize it to make sure the price stays high. Okay, that is corruption on a whole other level that we're just unaccustomed to, right? I don't know. I think Trump is amoral, to be honest. The Sorolla thing was humiliating. As you point out, the ship nearly got hit by either drones or missiles coming from Yemen. Apparently, an F-35 nearly got shot off the sky. The ship, as it was banking through 2 Super Hornets off of the aircraft, some pilots had to bail out because they weren't able to get caught. I mean, when the plane is coming onto the landing, it was a mess. They were never able to get air superiority. Apparently, they knocked out like 20-something Reaper drones out the sky. They spent over $1 billion in a month and got nothing. And as you point out, Trump at one point says, okay, we're done. See, I don't know if it's his threshold for pain, if it's that, like, what happens if they actually hit the aircraft carrier? Or what happens if they do knock an F-35 out the sky? And he doesn't want to deal with that reality, considering how close it was.
I think you're totally right. I think you're totally correct. I don't. Trump does not want to see an aircraft carrier go down on his watch because imagine what would happen if it did.
Yeah.
I mean, he would find himself in a major war with the Houthis, and you don't want to mess with the Houthis. They have been at war since 2015, ever since MBS, Mohammed bin Salman, declared war on them, and then left for a 1-week vacation in the Maldives, and the U.S. State Department couldn't even get in contact with them. They were going crazy. They had no idea why their close ally was declaring war on Yemen, and they couldn't even get MBS on the phone.
Wait, I didn't know that, by the way. You said because I remember, like, the New York Times was talking about Obama effectively greenlighting it. Obama didn't want MBS to intrude and put in the deal with Iran. And so Obama just greenlit the war. Saudis was like, it's going to be easy. It's going to be a cakewalk. They just banned the rebels. And Obama was like, I don't believe him. And he greenlit it anyway. I did not know, though, that he went on vacation immediately after declaring war.
Yeah, and when he got back from vacation, Antony Blinken flew to Riyadh to give him a bear hug and say, yes, yes, it's okay. We're behind you. Don't worry. So it's okay. And and that war would never have proceeded without U.S. and British technical assistance. So for 10 years, I think it was April. I think just past the 10th anniversary.
Yeah.
And the Houthis have suffered incredibly. I mean, the Houthis are the poorest country in the Middle East, being attacked by the richest country in the Middle East, and they have taken an incredible pounding, but they've gotten very good at this.
Yeah.
The Yemen's a very mountainous country. The geography is really difficult, and there are lots of hiding places, and they've gotten excellent at this kind of warfare. So. So if an aircraft carrier had gone down, I mean, Trump would be tearing his hair out.
Yeah.
He'd be forced into a serious war, and the last place he wants to have a serious war. So it would have been a disaster. So Trump got out. But as I said before, I don't really think Trump wants war. Joe Biden wanted war. Joe Biden was looking for a fight. But I don't think Trump is.
But it seems like he's looking for a fight in Iran. I mean, like, I have two versions in my head, and I don't know which one is entirely true. And so I never really take a hard stance on one or the other when I'm talking to the audience. I kind of present both, even though I'm cynical of these negotiations. Donald Trump started off the negotiations. Pezeshkian was open to negotiations. He was. Even in the very beginning, the Ayatollah was more of a hard ass about it because the Ayatollah was there when they blew off the JCPOA, when Donald Trump did. And so Pezeshkian was like, I'm open for a deal. However, I'm amending my position with the Ayatollah. Basically, whatever the Ayatollah wants, that's where I'm at. Trump, as opposed to accepting the deal that they were willing to have, meaning negotiation, he comes in and says, I'm going to bomb you. I'm going to bomb you. You better accept my deal. I'm going to bomb you. If you don't come to a deal, I'm going to bomb you. Iran are nice people, but we're going to bomb you. And then initially, when Witkoff goes, people thought, okay, well, Witkoff is a realist. He's not an ideologue. He's not Rubio. He's not a Zionist. So maybe this is an honest arbitration. Maybe Trump actually does want a deal. And some of the reporting came out that said Iran was actually shocked because Joe Biden wasn't interested in a deal, whereas Trump seems to be interested. Witkoff comes back, sounds like Arghachi, the foreign minister of Iran, meaning it sounds like they're on the same page. We're going to get rid of the amount. We're going to lower our enrichment threshold, all of this stuff. Witkoff gets attacked and immediately switches up. Rubio starts to talk more, saying we need like the Libyan model. They need to get rid of all of their enrichment. And even started tying it to, well, they're supporting terrorism in the region, so we also need to stop supporting their regional allies. So, the U.S. is the only one who would support terrorists in the way that Donald Trump was congratulating that jihadist president in Syria yesterday. And so initially what started off as reasonable ended up being a maximalist demand that he knows in advance that Iran is never going to accept. The threats don't matter. They're not going to accept it. So I have a hard time with that. Because from my point of view, it's like, okay, well, if you're going in with something that you want, that you know the other side is never going to accept, then these negotiations aren't on the level. Just like when George Bush was negotiating with Iraq under this notion of, okay, we're trying to get rid of their weapons of mass destruction, which they didn't have. Well, this sounds like a very similar argument to me. Weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, weapons of mass destruction in Iran. We're going to negotiate with Iraq when really the negotiation, if you listen to Scott Ritter, and I think he's right, was done in order to provoke a war, not to stop one. And now you have Witkoff going over there, delivering a message of something that they're never going to accept in a very similar vein that George Bush did. How should I look at this? I mean,
I agree. It's very confusing. It's very confusing. I would argue that in January 1980, Zbig Brzezinski, wrote
Yeah.
what was called the Carter Doctrine, which essentially declared the entire Persian Gulf to be a crucial American resource. And so from that time on, the U.S. has been struggling for hegemony in the Gulf region.
Mhm.
And Iran has been the great fly in the ointment from a U.S. point of view.
Right.
Because Iran is an alternative power structure. The U.S. sees it as an enemy, and it's the whole focus of its policy for 45 years has been to neutralize the so-called Iranian threat. Now, obviously, I don't regard Iran as I don't adopt such language by any means whatsoever.
Right.
Iran has a total right to self-determination, not to be menaced by the United States. And the U.S., what right does the U.S. have to lay claim to an oil resource, thousands and thousands of miles from U.S. borders? It's an absolute outrage. But the U.S. has been pursuing this policy since literally World War II, since FDR met with Ibn Saud in February 1945 in the Great Salt Lake off the Suez Canal.
Yeah.
So this is long-standing U.S. policy, a major part of U.S. foreign policy. And so what I think Trump is trying to do, if I hope I'm correct, is that he's trying to somehow push back on Iran to get Iran to defer to U.S. hegemony, and there's a lot of wiggle room in that formula. And he also wants Iran to reel in the Houthis, and it's not all entirely clear that Iran can do that.
Exactly.
Right, and he wants Iran to reduce its nuclear stockpile, but Iran at this point, looks at North Korea and says, and starting to say, look, a nuclear weapon is the ultimate insurance policy against U.S. aggression. That's the difference between Iran and North Korea. North Korea, knows that the U.S. will never dare invade because of its nuclear arms.
Yeah.
And so what Trump is trying to push back, trying to make a deal, trying to somehow, which will expand U.S. control over this crucial region. And Israel has an interest in this as well, because Israel sees Iran as a threat. But Iran has lost crucial allies in Syria and in Lebanon. And so the U.S. thinks that Iran has been weakened. Netanyahu kind of agrees, but meanwhile, the absolutely atrocious war in Gaza grinds on, where there's every indication that Netanyahu is imposing a Trumpian peace based on ethnic cleansing. Yes. And the Iranians, Jolani can go along with that in Syria, but Iran, for various regional reasons, finds that very difficult to accede to that horrendous outcome. Mm-hmm. So that's what this is, a very complicated three-way conflict that Trump is trying to negotiate his way through. But and if Trump succeeds, that just merely means that ethnic cleansing in Gaza will accelerate.
But Iran is given its deal, effectively saying, look, we will get rid of the amount of enrichment that we have. We are not going to stop enriching but we will lower it down, I think it's like 3% or 3.6%, whatever that number is, because we're using it for radioactive therapy and stuff like that in the nation. We will give our enriched uranium away to somewhere else. Effectively, a JCPOA 2.0.
Yeah.
Is what they're effectively saying.
Absolutely.
The problem with that is Trump is saying, we want the Libyan model. We want you to get rid of even your ability to enrich, which, again, is a red line and was always going to be a red line. It was a red line from jump. And so if he is initiating what he is considered to be a red line, it seems like he's creating a context, even with the Houthi stuff, acting as if everything that the Houthis or Ansarullah does is synonymous with Iran. It sounds like the people who, let's say, are more darker on this, who are more cynical on this, is that you are creating a context by which to justify attacking Iran or working with Israel to do so, in the same way that George Bush created a context by which to attack Iraq. It doesn't matter if the rest of the world thinks it's nonsense. It's like, just because two people are arguing doesn't mean that one side is making any sense. It just means two people are arguing, right? It sounds like he's creating a context and a framework by which he can say, well, we tried to negotiate. Iran didn't want to negotiate, or at the very least, they didn't want to give us what we wanted. We tried to be reasonable. We said that they could have nuclear power. But what's built into you can have nuclear power is you can't refine it. You need to somehow get it from somewhere else. So you're no longer a sovereign country in regards to your affairs, which no country would accept. That's my issue with this. That's why I'm more cynical on this. And exactly what you just said, the US policy goes for decades, not just with Trump. Like, this didn't just start. You can look at Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya. All of these countries were fundamentally destroyed. It didn't matter, the president, whether they were Democrat or Republican. And now you have Trump in with one of the most Zionist, whack job administrations of the people around him that they've ever had, which is part of the reason Netanyahu is like, we're doing this now. We're going for it all now. We're taking all of Gaza now. We're trying to take the West Bank now. We're doing it while Trump is in office right now. How can I not be cynical when I look at this?
No, you're. I agree with you totally. I mean, I think you're the JCPOA 2.0 is spot on. I mean, Trump. The JCPOA was negotiated in January 2015, if memory serves. Trump walked away from it in May 2018, and now he's trying to bring it back. And the JCPOA was doing its job. It was a treaty that was accomplishing what everybody who had a hand in it, wanted it to do.
Right.
But Trump backed away for no reason. And the reason he backed away, this is really, really important. Essentially, April 2015 saw a crisis break out, where the U.S. entered into this deal. I'm not sure when the formal signing was. I think it may have been a few months later, but the deal was announced in April 2015. The Saudis were furious because they thought they were being abandoned by the U.S. MBS had just taken over shortly before from his aged father, who's basically semi-comatose. So essentially, in return for the Saudis not raising a stink, Obama allowed them to do two things. One is he allowed them to transfer U.S.-made shoulder-carried anti-tank missiles to al-Qaeda forces at that time in southern Turkey, which they then used to invade the northern Syrian province of Idlib. That was Jolani's power base for years. And then he also allowed them to bomb Yemen. So paradoxically, peace with Iran actually led to an extension of war, if you can believe it.
Interesting.
So the U.S. greenlit the al-Qaeda takeover of Idlib and the Saudi assault on Yemen, which, by the way, is a Shiite country, mostly Shiite, and a different brand of Shiism from that in Iran, but still a form of Shiism. So peace led to war, strangely enough. And we see the repercussions, 10 years later, where Idlib becomes Jolani's base, which he then uses to overthrow a greatly weakened Assad government. and launch a pogrom against Alawites and Druze, just as we warned he would back in 2015. I mean, I wrote countless articles saying that, saying the U.S. was allying with Al Qaeda and was promoting this kind of ethnic eradication. And sadly, I was vindicated. And the war in various forms has continued in Yemen. And if Trump wants to extend that ring of fire to Iran, he may wind up doing so. But I think that, as I said before, I think that Trump is loath to do that, because what happens? He'll bomb Iran. I guess what's in the back of the mind of the neocon establishment, who are trying to sort of maneuver Trump in their direction, is that U.S. and Israel will bomb Iran, and that will lead to the overthrow of the mullah's regime. And that's not impossible. That's not impossible.
Yeah, because I don't know what is in his mind. Because I can only look at what he does. And so it's like, he could very well not want a larger war. And other people have made the point of saying, yeah, he may not want that larger war, but he may think that he can get away with bombing without a larger war. And I don't think, you may be very well correct. In his mind, I don't want a larger war. He may think that. I want to stop these wars. But he also, I think presidents get trapped in their rhetoric. When you say stuff, that is a hell of a cliff to walk back from after spending 3 months saying you're going to bomb this place if they don't get the deal that you want. But the deal that you offer is something they can never accept. And then it's like, okay, so now what? You're on the pot. What do you do? Do you make that attack? Because people in your ear are saying, hey, they're not really going to hit you back. Or, hey, they're not as strong as you think they are. You couldn't even get air superiority over Yemen. Iran is a different animal. It's just shocking to me. I guess my feeling is you're right. I suspect, all things being equal, Trump can't stomach the consequences of a larger war. If you can't stomach the attack on Yemen, Lord knows you're not going to be able to stomach a large-scale fight in the Middle East. And I guess I'm stuck with this thing of maybe he doesn't believe that it would be a large-scale attack if he attacks.
Well, I think, yeah. I think that Trump does not want a large-scale war in the Middle East, but Trump wants, it's the Goldilocks solution. Doesn't want a little war, doesn't want a large war. He wants just the right war,
just right.
In which all the advantages accrue to the U.S. side. And I guess everybody wants that. That's the kind of war that everybody wants. But it's not easy to arrange, because wars have a way of growing on their own. Netanyahu wants a larger war. Netanyahu sees Iran as an existential threat, but Netanyahu so far is in a very advantageous position. He has eliminated Hezbollah. He has eliminated Assad. He wants to strike a real blow at Iran to force Iran to back off and perhaps tell the Houthis to back off, while he proceeds with the ethnic cleansing of Gaza and the complete and total elimination of Hamas as any kind of military threat. I think that Netanyahu's strategy is fairly clear. I think that Trump doesn't really have an idea what he's doing at all.
Do you believe in the rift between Trump and Netanyahu? Because I'll tell you two things. I think people are misunderstanding the rift. I think just because Trump and Netanyahu might not like each other, or Trump doesn't like Netanyahu, that has nothing to do with Trump and Israel. I think those are different things. And I remember there's this clip where Trump was talking about Israel and talking about Palestine. And he says initially he believed that it was the Palestinians that didn't want a deal. And he said he went to talk to Mahmoud Abbas. He said he came across very fatherly to me. He says, and I realized when talking to him that they do want a deal. he said he was shocked by the whole thing. And then he said he goes to talk to Netanyahu. Within 1 or 2 minutes, he realizes, he tells him, "You don't want a deal, do you?" And which obviously the answer was no. He didn't want a deal. He wanted all of it. So that has to be also in his mind. Like, so he has to know that, despite of what he says and what he does, that is something that Trump on some level gets. So the rift between these two may be real, but I don't know if it affects anything in regards to what he's allowing Netanyahu to do. Because I agree with you. Netanyahu wants it all. He figures Trump is my guy. This is the chance that we have. Another president may not allow me to go this far. Let's do it.
I'm very skeptical about a rift. Very
Yeah.
skeptical. Very skeptical. I mean, yeah, there are going to be tensions, no doubt about it. U.S. and Israeli interests do not align completely, but there is the U.S.-Israeli partnership is very, very strong, especially in this part of the world.
Yeah.
Exceedingly strong. And the U.S. has consistently deferred to the Israelis, given them their lead, assured them a backup, and even as I said before, and in Gaza, Trump actually was actually more radical than Netanyahu. I mean, this idea of just completely cleansing Gaza, ethnically cleansing Gaza. This was Trump's idea, not Netanyahu's.
It's
And
Joe Biden's idea also, by the way. If you remember, Joe Biden was trying to get Egypt and Jordan to take in the Palestinians from Gaza and from the West Bank.
when was that actually?
This was during the Biden administration, where Joe Biden was making inroads into Egypt. Egypt told him no. Jordan told him no, just like Egypt told Trump no, and Jordan told Trump no. I swear to God, I'm not lying to you. It was.
But
It just wasn't as loud. as Trump is.
Was it individuals or injured people or not the entire population?
He wanted to effectively, because Israel has an issue. Either they're going to kill all 2 million people, which seems very difficult to do, or you're going to expel those population. And they're confronted with that. And Joe Biden was confronted with that, especially after October 7th.
There's a third option: slavery.
Apartheid, right?
Yeah, well, no, I don't mean slavery. I mean actual. I think something approaching actual slavery. I'm not going to buy and sell Palestinians, but they want to completely dismantle Hamas and then impose a kind of a monitoring system where they will the Palestinian population will be under the closest supervision possible for an eternity, living in poverty, living on under 24/7 monitoring. I mean, China has done something along these lines in Xinjiang, but this will be a thousand times more. Yeah. 1,000 times more. And I think that may be the option that Netanyahu is pursuing. But on the West Bank, though, the settler pogrom is intensifying, and I think that they're looking for a mass expulsion of some sort, or a mass expulsion, or just making life so miserable for the Palestinians that they eventually just leave or are completely and totally neutralized as well. I mean, it's an absolutely intolerable situation, but it looks like it's happening.
Well, Netanyahu's recent speech effectively made it clear that he wants all-out war. He wants to send people, his soldiers, back into Gaza, that the people won't be allowed back into the country or back into the area. Like that, and he said we need to find some other states to take them because we're not going to let them back in. So this seems to be their plan. I mean, when Witkoff, I will give them this. When Witkoff got the POW, the American POW back, and Witkoff talks to the hostage families and says something to the effect of, look, Netanyahu doesn't end the war. And there's no way to go with it, but he wouldn't end it, which is the reason why you can't get your people back. And there's talk about Trump going behind the scenes, talking to Hamas, sidelining Israel as it has talks with Hamas because it doesn't believe that they're going to end the war. And what, you got like 500 generals, intelligence coming out saying, hey, don't believe Netanyahu, help us end the war, help us create a sustainable peace lasting into the future. I mean, is the issue really just Netanyahu? I mean, I've been to Israel. There's a level of fascistic nature in that country that's not just Netanyahu. But is there, let's say, a groundswell of people, let's say, especially in leadership positions, that can see this is unsustainable? We can't keep doing this. We're a world pariah. This
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think that Netanyahu has got very solid political backing.
Support.
I think his position is very strong. The new Israeli commander in chief is a guy named Eyal Zamir. It's very, very interesting. The Israeli military used to be run by what they call the paratroop, the paratroop mafia. That the paratroopers are this elite military force, and they sort of dominated the military establishment, and they seem to favor very light, quick actions.
Wait, just be clear. You don't mean like jumping out of airplanes, paratrooper. You mean
No, yeah. Israel has a paratroop unit, which is a very elite unit. It was plugged into all the power centers. It's sort of known if you graduate from the paratroop corps, you were plugged into top military and business circles in Israel. That's just the way the country worked. But the new guy, Eyal Zamir, comes out of the armored forces. So he is a tank commander. And he is a Marshal Zhukov. You know who Marshal Zhukov was?
With the Russian
and so he believes in total warfare. He doesn't want to send in troops to engage with Hamas and then pull them back. He wants to send in troops to occupy territory and make sure that Hamas is totally expelled. And then bring in, as you know, the idea is to bring in U.S. companies to run food distribution, no longer the UNWRA. Right. That essentially they'll use that as an instrument of political control. And they're starving the population now in order to reduce resistance to that idea. So Zamir wants to expel, clear, force out Hamas once and for all, completely eliminate them as a military threat. And that is the stage they are moving into. And I have little doubt that as to the support in Israel for that policy.
Wow. That's dark.
I wish I had different things to tell you, something else to tell you, but that is the way things are.
That's what it looks like.
I can tell.
I mean, what you were saying is exactly what it looks like. Like I said, I've been there. There is a visceral hatred. I give you an example. When that video was released of those Israelis raping the Palestinian in the jail cell, and it started to be a debate in Israel over that video. And the majority of the population said, that's okay.
Listen, Jamal, it takes two to tango, okay?
It takes two to tango.
It takes two to tango. Hamas started a war it couldn't win. And now the Palestinians are paying the price.
I agree with you.
I think that Hamas is the worst third world force I have ever seen. They followed a strategy of mass martyrdom, not for themselves, but for the Palestinian people. In fact, a guy named. But
Dave, you're ignoring the fact that for 70 years that they have been, Hamas is exactly what Israel made them. Meaning, in the same way that you had slave revolts, in the same way that you had revolts, in any case, you had this kind of oppressive government. Israel has been putting these people in prisons. They've been beating, killing. Anytime they've had peaceful marches, they've been shooting. That last peaceful march that the Palestinians had, they were shooting people in the knees, stomach, and in the head.
And it
I
was
mean, this
Hamas,
is
which herded them to the border, knowing what would happen. Hamas wants to create martyrs because it somehow believes this will lead it to win in the end. I mean, listen, Hamas is the Muslim Brotherhood. These are not, Hamas is not some slave who suddenly just loses it and goes crazy.
I'm not, just to be clear, I'm not saying
this is
there's
an organized political force going
Yes.
back to the 1920s with a long history, a long body of ideology. They are a conscious political force. They embarked on this strategy, and they have essentially. And the Palestinians, as you're aware, that major anti-Hamas protests have erupted in Gaza.
Yeah.
Essentially, the people of Gaza, this is a Jonestown by the sea.
I mean,
And as you know, we know now that Jonestown was not a mass suicide. In other
people
words,
didn't know if you
people
were
with
taking-
guns were standing by, forcing people to drink the Kool-Aid. And the Palestinian people never agreed to become martyrs. And they don't want to be martyrs now. They want to have a life of freedom and equality. But
Yeah, but they also don't want to be in an open air ghetto. And they also have dealt with this notion of oppression going back for decades. I'm
absolutely.
saying, however
Absolutely.
bad Hamas is, I agree with you that it is a vicious political organization. We agree on that. I'm pointing out that, for one, they were voted in. Two, Palestinian Authority has zero credibility, meaning they hate Mahmoud Abbas's ass, and they hate him because he's effectively a collaborator with the Israeli government that is oppressing the people who are there. I'm saying the fastest boat that was moving, that was showing any level of opposition, was Hamas. And whether this was a fool's errand or not, fair enough, right? You've effectively given pretext for Israel to do what it wanted to do anyway. But let's be clear, though, Israel had been going on these bombing raids. They've been going on these mowing the grass, killing kids, throwing kids in prison, this level of oppression for 70 years. I'm trying to point out, what do you expect them to do? Just to accept the position that they're in, or to resist? And what do you think is going to take place when people are under that level of oppression for that long?
Well, those are all very good questions. First of all, I don't expect the so-called resistance to make things 1,000 times worse. I mean, as bad as they now look like positively idyllic compared to what the brutal reality, the horrendous, intolerable, reality that the Palestinians are facing now. So, I think that, you said that Hamas was voted in. Yeah, it was voted in 2006.
Right.
They haven't had an election in 19 years.
Yes.
Its democratic mandate has faded, and the people were not consulted in this October 7th operation. And Hamas took a bad situation and made it 1,000 times worse. Now, I fully agree. I've been an anti-Zionist for better than half a century.
Yeah.
I fully agree that the situation that Israel imposes is intolerable. And Gaza had been the last, in contrast to the West Bank, Gaza had been unconquered. And the Gazans were very, very proud of the fact that that Israel could not enter their territory, and there were these crazy operations. Hamas would send out rockets or dig a tunnel. Israel would send in the F-16s, go back and forth, and that was obviously horrible, and hundreds of people died, and that's a crime.
Under Obama, it was like 2,200, 80% of which women and children.
It's horrible. But what's replaced it is infinitely worse.
Yeah.
You have a dance of death, and by the way, the Israel and there's a process of ideological convergence where between Israel and Hamas. Because Smotrich and Ben Gvir, the two outright fascists, are really just have an identical Hamas, a Muslim Brotherhood ideology. Only you just switch, Moses for Muhammad, and that's it.
But what do you do? I've had this conversation with
what do you do?
Not Kincaid. What is his name? Kabbalah. Because it's a box, right? Like I'll give you an example. Martin Luther King in the United States was like, okay, well, peace is a better option because we have more leeway in which to kind of make this argument. And you can use the moral force of the First Amendment and ideals of America as a way of pushing back in order to kind of show, look, we're getting killed, we're getting beaten. Is this really the country that you want? Meaning you could use a moral force in the US to push your way to get more freedoms and liberties. That is not the situation they have in Israel or let's say in Gaza. I mean, you're talking about outright oppression. I've been there. I was in the West Bank. Like I went to Bethlehem, and I remember there was one space for people who were like Americans, who could walk on through, and then you have a 3-hour line for Palestinians who are getting checked, like relentlessly checked, or on the bus where they pull the bus driver out because he didn't have the correct identification and put the guy in the truck and send the guys to jail. But they would go as an American, hey, they would speak perfect English. Mr. Thomas, if you wait right here, we'll have another bus for you in a moment. We apologize for the delay and blah, 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 blah. Like, meaning it is an obvious apartheid system in one case, and it is an obvious open air ghetto in another. And so if you are a Palestinian, you can't protest. That's not accepted. You can be thrown in a cage. You can be shot for throwing a rock. Then you're under direct oppression. What do you do? And as I was telling Kavalik, real quick, I was like, this clearly is worse. Like, meaning running a military campaign where you're attacking a military checkpoint, you end up killing a lot of people, civilians. Israel opens up a killing spree as a result of they would call it resistance. What do you do if that's what you end up with? I don't have an answer for it.
I met a guy once. His name was Mohammed Awad, if I recall correctly. This is the 1980s. Mm-hmm. He was a Palestinian American dentist. I think he moved somewhere in Ohio. Yeah. He loved America. So much freedom, so much equality, and he was especially a fan of Martin Luther King.
Yeah.
What a great man. He accomplished this all peacefully. And what a saintly character. I'm going to go back to Israel/Palestine, and I'm going to use Martin Luther King's tactics to mount a civil rights campaign. And it'll undoubtedly be just as successful as it was in America. He lasted 2 weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
The Israelis got him out of there so fast. It was unbelievable. 2 weeks.
Precisely my point.
I think that they solved the problem in a way the U.S. could not solve it, in the way George Wallace could not solve the problem. They just got him the hell out of there. And you're absolutely correct. I mean, and that was the worst thing they ever did. Because Mohammed Awad, I don't know where he is now. He's probably tearing his hair out somewhere in Ohio, beside himself with grief and wondering where it all went wrong. My heart goes out to him. Essentially, Israel closed the door to peaceful change, but it had to. That is Zionist doctrine. Zionist doctrine is they want a Jewish state, and a Jewish state means a small, manageable, tame minority. They'll allow that, but can be no challenge to its power, and no resistance, and consequently, as things have gotten out of hand, the far right in Israel has grown, and you have the parallel growth of these two, I don't know, semi-fascist, quasi-fascist, ultra-right forces on either side, dedicated to their mutual destruction, and the result is a dance of death. Now, you asked, what do we do?
What do you do? Like, I don't know what to do with that. It
I,
seems
I,
like
to me, this
resistance is
it's the answer. This is gonna sound completely laughable, but I think it's actually true. The answer is socialism. I mean, essentially, as difficult as it is, we have to form an alliance between working people on both sides of the divide. And this seems completely far-fetched, but I would actually argue, and I have argued this in print, that Israel-Palestine is ground zero for the Middle East socialist revolution. That they actually have the most advanced proletariats in that part of the world, the most democratic proletariats, differentiating them from the governments in charge, and that they face the greatest barriers, which means that if those barriers can be overcome, then there's hope for the rest of the region. All through the Middle East, minorities are suffering horrendously.
yeah,
A few hundred miles to the north, there are the Alawites,
right.
more than 1,000 of which have been killed. Now, I mean, I don't know any Alawites. I know a little bit about their doctrine. I have no personal ties to the Alawite community, but I think it's horrifying to see thousands, more than 1,000 people killed in these circumstances. And the same with the Druze. And the Israelis, by the way, as you know, are making a bid for
Druze.
Druze loyalty, and they actually may succeed. And so that's one Israeli strategy, and it may be successful. But all through the region, Berbers and Morocco and Algeria, etc., it is filled with these minorities who are severely oppressed, who are longing for freedom, and clearly, that's what the agenda is. That's what has got to be accomplished. We've got to create a socialist democracy which will, secularize and create freedom for minorities, and allow people, Alawites, Druze, Berbers, Druze, Jews, Berbers, Christians, et cetera, to be carried on in peace. But that as the U.S., everybody involved is promoting the opposite.
Daniel, I got to be honest with you. It would have never occurred to me that the world community would have stood by and watched over 100,000 people get slaughtered and starved to death. And just to be clear, Hamas did a military campaign, almost like a prison break. And yeah, they killed civilians, fair enough. But if you look at this, Israel has killed, 100 times more than what Hamas did? And the world community has just stood and watched and not cared? That is astonishing to me as a response.
Look, October 7th, proportional to population, was equal to roughly 11, no more. It's like 15 9/11s. Okay.
Yeah.
So the U.S. went bonkers after 9/11. I argued against it. Argued for a more temperate policy. I mean, obviously, the war on terror was a huge expansion of U.S. imperialism.
I'm sorry to interrupt real quick though, but the difference is we were not occupying and basically subjugating those countries. Israel is.
But the U.S. was. The U.S. had essentially fostered an Islamist uprising in Afghanistan. It had brought decades of war to the Middle East. There plenty of reason for Muslims to hate America.
That is true. That is
right?
I guess I'm talking about like direct subjugation. I'm trying to make a distinction between they are meaning Hamas is what Israel made them, in the same way that when those slave revolts, that those slaves and the revolt was based upon the fact that they were slaves. I'm trying to make this direct link between 70 years of subjugation, 70 years of imprisonment, of killing and mistreatment, crafted that almost like you're making a beer.
But
it's complicated. I don't know.
I'm glad to bring up slavery because the U.S. saw a very small number of slave revolts.
Yes.
And it's even historians aren't even sure. The Denmark Vesey case, I'm not even really sure whether it even was a revolt or just was paranoia on the part of the slave owners. Slaves were waited and watched very carefully. And they were very strategic in their thinking. And they did not go out and engage in mass martyrdom. They waited until the Civil War broke out, and then they made their bid for freedom and joined the Union forces by the hundreds of thousands and provided the margin of victory for the Union. And they appeared to have won great advances for themselves. So they did think strategically and effectively. And I'm saying that's what you got to do. You've got to think long term, map out an effective strategy for yourself, and pursue it. That's all I'm saying, really. And Hamas has not done that.
That's not effectively what happened, is your point.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I'm leaving you to the last word. Daniel, I've deeply enjoyed this conversation. I really have. We've had a great crowd here also. Thank you for this, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very
Daniel
much.
Lazare, really fantastic conversation. We've had a damn good show today. Daniel Lazare is an independent journalist and author, best known as a critic of the U.S. Constitution, American politics, government, and social policy in general. He's written several books, including The Frozen Republic, The Velvet Coup, and America's Undeclared War. You can follow Daniel on Twitter. I'm not going to call it X, at DH Lazare. And you can find his column on theweeklyworker.co.uk and many other outlets.
Jamarl, by the way, I no longer work for the Weekly Worker. I now publish at I'll send you an email later to clarify. I now publish at permanentrevolution.org and Democratic Constitution blog. So that's where we can find my stuff.
Permanentrevolution.org. God damn, that's strong. What is that, .com?
.com, not .org.
.org, okay.
And Democratic Constitution blog.
Okay. Thank you for this, man. I really appreciate it. Please send me that email so I can update my records.
Great. Thank you.
You have a good one. Be safe.
Thank you.
All right. Really interesting conversation. That was good. That was good. I'm going to go to my next one. Ted Rall, political cartoonist, syndicated columnist, host of TMI, Too Much Information, that comes on at 10 a.m. with the great, fantastic, the beautiful, the awesome Millichan. How you doing, Ted? You doing okay?
I'm good. I was jealous that you had Dan on. He's so good. And whenever, I don't know if you ever do this, but I mean, I always look at the books behind people when they're, and I'm like, I always hope, will I ever see my book on one of those shelves? It's only happened once, but I kind of hope it will happen. Then I can.
No, he was good. We got into this conversation. It wasn't supposed to be, but we got into this conversation on Hamas. I am super conflicted. Everything in me tells me that you should resist oppression, and that it is obvious if you have a situation where you're enslaving people, where you're putting people in bondage, where you are occupying, that those people are not going to acquiesce to that. People just, it's something in us that understands on this kind of gut, deeply, deeply held level that this level of oppression is intolerable and should be resisted. And then his point is but yeah, man, look at what happened. Meaning they didn't bring on the revolution. They didn't bring on all of these groups like Iran or the Houthis and Hezbollah all at once attacking Israel. That didn't happen. They were effectively left to their own devices, with the world watching them being slaughtered to the tune of 100,000 or more people, and not to mention being starved, with the world just watching, seemingly not caring. that is a rough argument to get around. Like,
Let me
even-
get around it.
Please.
I think Hamas won, and I think I think we are closer to a independent Palestinian state than we've ever been in my lifetime. I'm almost 62 years old. And I think, what's really fascinating about all this is, first of all, Hamas, just to roll back a little bit, before October 7th, Hamas was basically, by the standards of all these Islamist groups in that region, was one of the moderate ones, right? I mean, they were receiving, in the early days of the war, the IDF showed these briefcases full of euros, bundles of euros that they found in Hamas leaders' homes.
Yeah.
Well, where do you think they came from? They came from Israel.
Right.
It's not like they went to the ATM in Gaza and got that.
Well,
right?
that's what I told them. I was like, Hamas is what they made them in so many ways,
Hamas was
right?
a fully owned subsidiary of Benjamin Netanyahu, right?
Yeah.
And the CIA. So Hamas, basically the spin was originally Hamas was brought into the fold and basically told back in 07, 08, 09, like, listen, you guys are going to get to govern at least Gaza, maybe the whole schmear, but at least Gaza. And we're going to work toward legitimization, and you can see the trails of that, right? Like Hamas, got rid of the supporters of Israel, Zionists always say, oh, they've pledged to destroy Israel. Well, that's they did, but then they took that out of their charter. It's not in their charter anymore. So they now basically tacitly acknowledge Israel as a state. So they're the moderate guys, but by being, there's no other word, cocks and dicks for forever, the Israelis radicalized Hamas.
Yes.
They basically put the pressure on, because they don't know, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. That's the Israeli point of view. They're like Americans on steroids. And they basically they radicalized them, and they turned them desperate, and they put them in a box.
Yes.
And, this violating all the rules of Sun Tzu and everything else, right? Like, always allow your enemy a graceful escape, never corner your adversary, but they did that. So, the attack was born of desperation, but I think we're going to look back and say, man, it was brilliant. This situation, in my view, currently, and I could turn out to be, of course, obviously, totally wrong, but I think this looks like East Timor. When the East Timorese rose up, they didn't stand a chance against the Dutch, right? The authorities in the Dutch and the Indonesians cracked down on them hard.
Yeah.
By some estimates, they killed half the population, but they got something they never had before. The Timorese, you were not even born, but back in the 1970s, the Timorese were reduced to acts of terrorism. Like, they hijacked a train in Holland, and there was kind of like a Black September type thing, but for the East Timorese, no one cared. It was like what the PLO was doing with the Achille Lauro. There was no sympathy to the Timorese independent. Nobody even knew where they were or what they were. But once a massive percentage of their population was slaughtered, basically to fight for their freedom, the world was like, these people have to have their independent state. And they ended up with one. They're now in the UN. They have the whole schmear. They have their own money. They have their own stamps. They're a country now. They paid a very high price for their freedom and their independence and their autonomy, but they got it. That's what's happening here. I think that was the calculus of Sinwar and the collective leadership of Hamas. We know, kind of like Ho Chi Minh, we know we're going to lose a lot of battles, and we know we're going to get our asses kicked. It's not going to matter, because that's actually like a feature, not a bug. The Israelis fell for a trap. The worst thing from Hamas's standpoint that Israel could have done was nothing. If Israel had just said, oh my God, we'll repair the fence, we're going to bury our dead, we're going to negotiate with Hamas to find out what pushed these people so far, they'd be like, oh fuck. They didn't fall for it. But the Israelis, they went whole hog, just as Hamas knew they would, because they'd studied that. Hamas understands the Israelis. The Israelis don't understand the Palestinians.
Well, the rabbit has to always understand the lion, right?
Yeah,
or the plots.
right,
Yeah,
right.
they
Like,
have to, right?
right, like at Guantanamo, the prisoners understand the guards don't understand the prisoners,
Exactly.
right? So
Oh man, I agree with you and I disagree with you. It depends on how it breaks. Because
I think they're going to end up with, like, I mean, the Israelis cannot. I mean, let's look at what they're doing right now. Right now, as we speak, they're leveling Rafah, right? Completely like bulldozing it. I mean, let's game this out. The Israelis, what do they want? They want to annex. We talked about this. They want to ethnically cleanse the strip, and they want to take the whole thing. They want to steal the land. They want to kick out all the people. Okay, geniuses in Tel Aviv. How are you going to do that? How? Like, where are these people going to go? Nobody's going to take them. The Egyptians, the Jordanians, it's a non-starter. Even if they wanted to, they don't want to, and they can't. And the people aren't going to go. And the international community is not going to put up with it. They're just not going to, it's not going to be, the Israelis have finally gone too far.
But the international community has watched.
They haven't done
years
dick. They didn't do dick for the Timorese either.
They have literally allowed them to be starved to death, 2.2 million people, not just for this week or 2 weeks, for the entire time for the most part. Because one of the deals that was supposed to be made was that humanitarian trucks were supposed to come in as part of the deals. They still weren't allowed in. And I mean, this goes even way back to Joe Biden, if you remember. Joe Biden was like, okay, 300 trucks are supposed to come in. Not even 30 were going in, which means they were being starved for over a year, if not longer.
Yes.
And the world just watched.
Well, it's that Zeno's paradox, right? Like, basically, we keep being told, any minute now, it's going to be mass famine. It's been mass famine. It has been mass famine.
Yeah.
I mean, the numbers I've heard are more like 200,000 dead. I mean, I'm going to say we're probably pushing 3 for the simple reason that we had a pre-war population of 2.3. I mean, we know the Israelis know the number to one figure because they spy so much. There's drones everywhere. They know everyone's addresses. They know everything, right? It's a surveillance state. 2.3 million before. Now there's 2 million left. Where did they go? They're not on vacation in the south of France, right? So there's 300,000. And if you look at them, I mean, I don't see how it could be fewer than that when you look just at the video, right? There's no one. I mean, the bombing was so extensive, and the famine and the medical problems and the people dying of diseases that are completely treatable. So I don't want to make light at all. I would never make light. I think what Israel is doing is absolutely atrocious. I think they should be a pariah state. They should be thrown out of the UN. I think no one should have diplomatic relations with them. I think they're the worst. Okay. That said, the Palestinians are going to end up with their own state. It may be a poor state. It may be a devastated state, but they're going to end up with one, and it's going to be rebuilt largely with the aid of the international community, not in some kind of Trump scheme. But it's going to end up that way just because there's no other way for it to go. The legitimacy, the UN has not done dick, but they're not going to let it. Just can't go further than this. This is it, and so the Israelis are, and I think that we're looking at the end game very soon for a variety of reasons. I mean, first of all, Trump wants that Nobel Peace Prize, dying for it. He can't get it, but there's no chance if he continues to support Israel. Give Israel a blank check. No way.
But that's what he's done. That's what Joe Biden did.
Yes,
in fact,
it's true.
I mean,
like most of this happened on Biden's watch, right?
Most of it did happen. Agreed. But Israel seemed to come to the conclusion, this is our chance.
Oh, yeah.
This is our chance.
Yeah.
We're going to potentially try to get Trump to go after Iran. We're going to have pogroms.
However, that's not happening either, right? I mean, the Turks
not yet.
Are chilling with the Saudis. I mean, that's big news. They used to not like each other.
Right.
And now there's like a lot of progress on Iran. So there's
wait. Why do you think there's a lot of progress? So Iran has offered a deal.
Yeah,
but keep in mind,
deal for the
it is a very good deal. It's the JCPOA 2.0.
It's better. It's new and improved because basically the processing will be jointly done. So there's complete inspection availability of those Iranian facilities. The Iranians would be getting their processed uranium from a joint task force that would be controlled by several countries the U.S. would have full access to. There's
Right.
like no way to say no to it.
But they have also made it clear we're not giving up our own processing.
Nor should they.
Nor should they. Trump has called for the Libyan model, effectively saying you cannot have any processing domestically.
Yeah, well, we saw how the Libyan model worked out for Muammar Gaddafi. Right?
Exactly, which is my point. Which means that Iran is being rational and reasonable for something that they shouldn't have to be reasonable about.
Decades. Yeah.
Now, Trump, however, is taking a maximalist approach to this, even tying everything that happens with the Houthis to Iran. Like, meaning, I don't know where this administration is going with this.
They don't know.
It's like they don't even. So you're of mind that what you see is what you get. This calamity is just calamity because you have an incompetent administration that doesn't seem to be able to make up its mind in regards to what it wants.
I think there's a lot of winging it, even though, look, obviously, you and I have both been impressed by the speed and breadth of what's happened in this second administration compared to the first.
Yes.
But still, there's a winging it aspect. H.R. Haldeman, who was the chief of staff for Richard Nixon, when he wrote his memoir, it's not really, it's actually, for people, like, you should read it if you haven't. It's really, very intriguing. For anyone else, it would be kind of, if you're not a wonk, it's boring. But like, I'll tell you, the interesting part to me was just to the extent of how so much of it looks like the last scene of Robert Redford in The Candidate, where he's like, now what? It's like, because they get in there, and for a whole year, now bear in mind, it's 1969, right? A lot of shit's happening. Man lands on the moon for the first time. The Vietnam War is raging. The civil rights movement and riots in the streets of cities like Newark are raging. The hippie thing, Weather Underground, raging. College campuses, raging. And even with all that, the administration really didn't do anything for at least a year, because they were literally, according to H.R. Haldeman, trying to figure out, okay, who do we talk to on Capitol Hill? How do the phones work? What is that agency? What do they do? Who do we call if we want to have something happen? It's like if you and I became president and vice president tomorrow, and I'd be like, President, I'd be like, President Thomas, okay, so wait, so we want Medicare for all, but who do we call at HHS to make that happen? And it's like that, and they get dropped in. They don't know what the fuck is going on. They're winging it, and Trump's trying to do a lot of things at the same time, right? We have talks in Istanbul. Potentially today and tomorrow between Russia and Ukraine, and Trump's like, well, right now I'm in, I'm down in the on the Gulf. But if something happens tomorrow, I can fly to Istanbul. I'm in the neighborhood. I can go over there, and if something happens, I'll. But if nothing happens, so he's kind of trying to do multiple things at the same time, which is cool, but it's hard, right? It's anybody who multitasks knows.
By the way,
hard.
Lindsey Graham showed up in Istanbul.
Oh God.
Lindsey effing.
The fact that he's so worried that peace might break out shows that there's hope.
But it shows that he's incompetent, because no peace is going to break out at that meeting. They could make progress because there's pressure on Zelensky. There's pressure on Zelensky, but I don't think it's the type of pressure that Lindsey Graham thinks. Zelensky is terrified for his life, and Zelensky knows that if he puts his name on some kind of deal, he will be hanging on the lampposts with died Jewish trader or something like that.
Just go to Lake Como.
right. What is it? He should go to France with his money and call it a day.
That's the plan. That's definitely the end game. The only question is when.
Puts me in the mind of Germany in the First World War, where they're beaten military, and yet they don't acknowledge it, and so they come up with the stab in the back myth. Oh, we were stabbed in the back, which is why we lost, etc.
Well, but that made more sense, because from the German point of view, the reason it's sold, right, is because if you're German, you're like, I don't understand. We invaded them. The entire war was fought over there. How did we lose?
How did we lose this?
And the analogy would be like if Russia lost. Russia didn't lose. Russia invaded Ukraine.
Right.
They won. they got like 90% of what they needed. So,
well, there's several main things though that they're not going to get outside of war aims. Like, how do you get a denazification without a change in government? And how do you get a neutral Ukraine?
And you don't
without a
want
change?
the thing. Here's the thing: is if you and I are, again, like, let's say we're Putin's best top advisors, right?
Yeah.
I'll be like, Mr. President, you don't want to occupy. You don't want to choose the government of Ukraine. It's like you want to rent. You don't want to own. Look at the U.S. in like when they try to own in Afghanistan and Iraq, you lose. And
Well, he just wanted to be neutral.
Knows that. He's a student
Like,
of history.
I just don't want to be.
He wants that government to be Ukrainian.
Yes.
And
Agreed. I agree with you.
And he doesn't want it to be a puppet, like a clear puppet state. What he
I
wants
agree with that too.
He wants it to be like we have Canada. He wants it to be docile and friendly would be great, but at least you guys will return our calls and you're not going to insult us and treat us like shit.
Agreed. But how do you do that when you have opposition political parties banned, opposition media banned, the Russian
Well, that's all
language?
going to have to. That stuff is going to have to end.
Exactly. But
Now,
how do you
there's
do
also
that?
another logistical problem. I think it can be resolved.
Yeah.
But Ukraine has lost the Donbass forever and Crimea forever. Okay, so the problem is that pre-2014, from the Russian standpoint, if you had a fair election in Ukraine, there was a strong chance you'd get like a Russian-friendly president,
Right.
which you did. Who was there, right, in 2014?
Yanukovych. Yeah.
Yeah, Yanukovych he returned Putin's calls, right? So that, and but just even if you have a fair and free election in what is the rump Ukraine, well, now those votes have now changed. The demographics are more Ukrainian nationalist.
Yes.
So that's going to be
A problem.
that needs to be negotiated by the outgoing Zelensky government to say basically it's now part, in the same way that Japan agreed to not be an aggressive military state in its post-war constitution, Ukraine needs to agree to that too. Maybe they can get a military, but they can have a military, but they can't be aggressive and they can't view Russia as an adversary or as an enemy.
Right. In order to do that, you need to surrender. That's my issue, right? Like
Not
wars
really.
are great.
You don't have to surrender. You can negotiate.
How do you do that without a surrender? Like, you have these hardcore neo-Nazis that are ensconced in the political system
And they're always
and
gonna be
in the
a
military.
They're always going to be a problem. You can have even if you appoint, like you try to denazify the regime by force. The neo-Nazi thing is huge in Ukraine, and it's going to be part of their culture. There's nothing you can do. You're going to be playing whack-a-mole with this for forever. That's just the nature of this country because of its history.
Yeah.
And the Russians know that they're going to have to manage this situation. It's not like, we sign a piece of paper, we're done, we move on.
Right.
Works for everybody.
Right.
No, it's not like that.
No, I agree with you. And I even agree with you that you wanted to be a neutral government. Meaning, I don't want a puppet. I just want a normal Ukraine. I just want a Ukraine that's neutral, right? I don't need you to be completely pro-Russia. Like Yanukovych was even looking at deals coming from the European Union. They're just bad deals. European Union's got all these strings attached to it.
Yes, and and Russia would love for Ukraine to join the EU because then they're going to have an EU trading partner right on their border. It's great. Putin wants them to join the EU. He's like, join the EU, not NATO. It's not the same thing. It's like, it'll be good for Russian trade. It really would. They'll have full access to the whole EU community. No interlocutors, right? They can just, they're going to pay fewer transit fees. It's great.
In the beginning, maybe. Oh, now I don't know. The European Union has been nuts. They've been passing these sanctions and everything else.
It's about to change anyway. Macron is gone in 2 years and never to come back, and no one like him is ever to come back. And Marine Le Pen may not. Well, she's not allowed to run it, but
she's not allowed to run.
But
Her
I mean,
ward
that could
is in the
change.
window.
She's going to avail herself of the lightning speed French legal system to fix that. So, which means by the time we're all 100, she might be able to run. But she'll have. There's other people in her party. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not a cult of personality.
What is it, Jorda Bardella? I believe the guy's name is.
Right. He's very young.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure the French will elect someone that young again after they kind of felt like there's buyer's remorse from Macron.
Well, he's out there talking about putting military in Ukraine because if Ukraine is not going to be part of NATO, they need to bring NATO into Ukraine. It's like, okay,
he's a fool.
Yeah.
It's strange too because on paper he seems so smart, but he's just not.
What do you think about the stuff that's coming out about Joe Biden? Now, to me, my mom asked me about this, and I'm like, dude, we said this as it was happening. Like that's like the annoying part of this conversation.
Very.
CNN has been running with it, and they've been asking. So right here, they were talking to Hakeem. Okay, so CNN is acting like, golly gee, who knew?
Who knew?
Joe Biden was out. Right, that Joe Biden was out of his mind. So they're asking Hakeem Jeffries, a man with charisma, but
from the book President.
Correct. This is. And again, it is frustrating to hear this because I'm like, dude, we all knew that he was a minute away from being a cadaver, right? And you guys are acting like
the emperor has no brain, right? I mean, it's like the thing is, when I read that fairy tale when I was a kid, I didn't understand it. I was like, I literally was like, what do you mean? Like people are pretending like he's wearing clothes. That makes no sense.
Yeah.
No, now I completely get it. It's like, no, who you believe, me or your lying eyes? I mean, it's like literally they're treating us like we're complete idiots.
Do you think you've been doing media for much longer than I have? Do you think, like, I can never tell if they're lying or if they're hiding the ball? I'm sorry, if they're lying or if they're delusional?
Yeah.
Is it just that the White House told them, hey, no, Joe Biden is okay? And the media was like, oh, well, the White House said they're okay, so he's okay. Or is it Joe Biden is out of his mind, but we can't really say anything about it because we're, towing the line? Which one is it?
I think it's both. I think it depends on who, right? So there's thousands of people who were complicit here, right? Thousands of reporters, DNC, flax, Democratic politicians, and ordinary citizens who kind of like, for example, there are ordinary Democrats, but in your life, who they kind of know. They always knew, like, we've all known people who suffered from dementia. It's like, oh, I know, I don't need to be an expert, a gerontologist to be like, that right there is a senile dude.
Right.
And so I think a lot of people are complicit here, and there's a bell curve, right? On one end, there are lots of people, they knew immediately. They knew back in 2019, this guy is fucked. His brain is pudding. And it's like, we just don't care, right? And it's the most natural thing in the world. We don't care. We'll say whatever. We'll do whatever. We'll say anything to get our way. We're just lying sacks of shit, just like the Republicans. And then they're on the other end of the bell curve. There's people who are like, if you say that, like, if Karine Jean-Pierre says that he's running around like a whirlwind through the White House and that we can't keep up with him, I guess that's true. And then in between is where the vast majority of them are, which is sort of like in the back of their minds, they know the truth, but they kind of don't really want to admit it, maybe even to themselves. I mean, it's sort of like when you're in a bad relationship, you should leave, but you don't
deal with it yet
because like you're sort of like I think that's where most of those people were, but they're all, as far as I'm considered, they're either all liars or stupid or both. All of them.
Because now they're like, who knew they had gambling in this establishment? I had no idea that there was gambling here. And it's like, okay, dude, are you really making this a story?
Yeah, or like outside of Dachau, right? Like, it smells funny sometimes around here. I wonder what that means.
Yeah, we had no idea. This is CNN talking to Hakeem Jeffries. Listen to the tenor of this conversation. And Hakeem
I feel
Jeffries,
sorry. I really feel sorry for Hakeem Jeffries.
I don't.
That he has to like go up there like an idiot and look like an idiot.
I don't feel sorry for any of these people. I think all of these are horrible people.
It's so cringe.
And his response makes it even worse, because this is the Elizabeth Warren response. This is the response that apparently all of them have decided to use to try to get from point A to point B on this very specific issue, because it's what you said. You guys have lied to the American public en masse, and you lost to a man that you call Hitler and a monster and a fascist, and he was going to put Liz Cheney up against the wall and shoot her in the face. This is the guy who you put Joe Biden up against. And it's like, it's your fault that he is in office. 8 million people didn't show
That's
up.
the thesis of Tapper's book, right? It's like literally the original sin, right? The title. This is the one reason, right? If you can point to one reason. Now, I don't know if that's true, but I mean, certainly it's a major reason.
Yeah, it's up there. So this is Jeffries trying to answer this question. Sarah, give me 1 second. I'm coming to you in a moment.
From the book, President Biden didn't even recognize George Clooney at a fundraiser that the movie star was actually hosting for him. Why should voters trust Democrats when it's clear so many in your party went to great lengths to keep Biden's condition hidden from the public?
I can't tell you what happened between George Clooney and President Biden. I wasn't at that event. What I can say is that we're not looking backward. We're going to continue to look forward, because at this moment, we've got real problems that need to be addressed on behalf of the American people, including the Republican effort to snatch away health care, snatch away food assistance, and hurt veterans.
You interacted with President Biden during those days, those final days he was president of the United States. Did you sense there was a major deterioration?
Well, in the conversations that I was able to have on behalf of the House Democratic Caucus in those final days, we simply expressed our perspective as to what would be best for the party at that given moment in time. President Biden subsequently made the decision that he was going to pass the baton to Vice President Kamala Harris. Of course, that was a decision that we...
I don't feel sorry for that asshole. I'm sorry, I just don't. Like, it's like, hey, you guys lied to the entire American public. He couldn't even recognize George Clooney. He was at Clooney's event, and he couldn't even recognize the man who gave him $25 million at that event.
And he's known Clooney for 30 years.
Yeah.
And by the way, he's George Clooney. I mean, you know.
Yeah, right. And that. Right. And that.
Yeah, like, you know, like if Meryl Streep, who I've never met, walks into a room, I know that's Meryl Streep.
That's astonishing.
I've seen Meryl Streep.
Especially if she was giving you $25 million.
Yeah, no, I would take care to remember that. Yeah.
That's astonishing. And their response is always, well, we're looking forward. We're not looking back.
Well, that's, you know, by the way, isn't that like a totally reminiscent of the talking point that Obama used when he first became president? And he was, oh, are you going to do anything about the torturers from the Bush administration and at Guantanamo? He said, no, we're looking forward. We're not looking backwards. It's, you know, it's not a very effective talking point. Really.
If I'm ever in court, I hope I can use that. Hey, we know you robbed that bank. I'm looking forward. I'm not looking back.
Right, that's in the past.
Yeah, that's in the past.
Why are you dwelling on old news?
I know I killed all of these people, but that's in the past. I'm turning over a new leaf. Ted, last word.
You know, the Democrats would be, I think this is worth pointing out, they would be in a position to go after Trump in part on his mental acuity right now, because it's not what it used to be.
Yeah.
And he's 78 years old. He's going to be 79 soon. He's the oldest man ever elected president at this point, more older than Biden was. And you could go after him. But Democrats cannot do that because they have no credibility whatsoever after what the shit they just pulled. I don't even think, you know, some Democrats are saying, oh, the party needs to come clean and apologize. Sure. But that's not going to do the job here. It's like, because you lied for so long about something that was so obvious that, like, and you insulted our collective intelligence. And, you know, that's hard to do. We're Americans. We're not that smart to begin with. But somehow you did that. It's like, wow. It's like the Democratic Party has lost all credibility at this point. I guess they should just look forward and be like, go after, try to find the working class and do some things for them that get to work. But you're at the bottom of a deep hole, and it's going to take a while. It's going to take a long time to get out.
Ted Rall, political cartoonist, syndicated columnist, host of TMI, Too Much Information with Manila Chan, coming on at 10 a.m. Ted, man, always appreciate you, man.
It's a pleasure.
Greatly enjoyed
Always,
this conversation.
anytime.
Thank you for this.
Thanks, Jamal.
You have a good one, man. Be safe.
You too.
All right. I would like to bring on my next guest. I saw her pruning in the background. You're always beautiful when you come on. So thank you for joining me.
I just woke up, so
you are perfectly fine. Nobody knows that you just woke up.
they do now.
There are days, man, where I am dragging ass. And then I have the indignity of reading comments and they're like, you should get some rest. You look like you're half asleep. Like,
I never read the comment.
I always read my comments. I am fascinated by my comments. And I know, and other people have told me that too, where they were like, oh, dude, I don't want a comment section. That place is treacherous. Look, sometimes they tell me things that I don't realize or don't know or get wrong. And so I do think some of them are helpful. If they're just trolls, I don't really care. But there are comments where it's like, okay, the guy's being a dick, but the guy's kind of right. Just out of defense. No, I read my comments. I even respond sometimes. It's like, dude, you're so full of shit right now. Or, other times it's like, I think you're being an asshole, but okay, I accept this. But it just depends on what it is. But Sarah Bils, just so people would know, Sarah Bils, she is part of DD Geopolitics, independent journalist, U.S. Navy veteran, co-founder of DD Geopolitics. It is a fantastic thing on YouTube and on Twitter. I see you more so on Twitter with the things, because I read my media more than I watch my media.
Yeah, me too.
And you guys have fantastic stuff. You guys are working 24/7. That's what a God you are.
Thanks.
So thank you for joining me. Welcome to the show.
You.
One of the things that you guys brought up that I was enamored by. Let me close some of these tabs. So you should have like 1,000 tabs. Hungary and Ukraine are having this low level, I don't even know what to call it. In one sense, apparently, Ukraine was working with opposition media in Hungary to go after Orban. There was that. In another case, Hungary was moving its heavy military equipment from one place to another. People was like, oh my God, Hungary is about to take part of Ukraine. They wasn't sure. In another case, Hungary shot down drones that were detected on radar near Tokaj. I may be mispronouncing that. What the hell is going on with this? I honest to God, did not know how to frame this because I didn't understand.
Oh, it's pretty simple, really. Hungary is one of the countries that's most stringent or stingy or against Ukrainian concessions. Concessions to Ukraine.
Well, they've been pushing hard for peace.
Yeah, in their own way. And then, so I think that the European or the EU is actually, if not encouraging this, definitely allowing this to go on. It's sort of that poking the bear or trying to see if there's any like chinks in the armor as you kind of like go around. So yeah, I'm not shocked at all. I'm shocked that at Hungary's great reaction, but I'm not shocked that Ukraine is employing these sorts of tactics in Hungary. They did it in Slovakia. They've done it in Russia. They'll do it anywhere.
Well, it's the belief that they tried to murder Fico. At the very least, Fico believes that.
For sure. Mm-hmm.
He totally believes it.
Mm-hmm.
There is a thought that they might have tried to murder Trump. There's that's been floating around, especially with all of the Ukrainian connections associated with the guy that got into the country. One of the guys. I mean, they got all sorts of Ukrainian connections, and they just waved them in as if, "Hey, you're from Ukraine. Everything is great."
It's kind of how it goes, yeah.
Yeah, it's just astonishing.
Well, they just did that with the South African refugees. So if you're white,
no issue.
Yeah.
Oh, what's funny about the South African thing? Just before I get back to the Hungary thing, Trump and his team is apparently looking at social media to make determinations on who to kick out the country. Mm-hmm. One of the South Africans that they lent to the country had put out a tweet, "You can't trust Jews." And gave the whole full-throated condemnation of Israel using Jews specifically. I always cringe at that because the issue is Israel. You have many
I
Jews who
think
are
that
against.
that stuff is so low IQ and like it's
Yeah.
just so elementary or sophomoric that you're like, why are we're so far past that conversation that I would be like taking a time machine to talk to you right
Yeah.
now. Like I think that stuff is so low IQ and like Neanderthalic. It's the
What?
Jews.
It's the Jews.
Oh, we're
But,
gonna get banned now, even for being sarcastic. But
but
still,
that's
I
what
mean, it's like
yeah, the YouTube doesn't get sarcasm, right? Well, they don't like if you put in Burkina Faso and Ibrahim Traore, they don't like that. They would
but I
demonetize
heard
those
that there
videos.
is like a big campaign against him. I was listening the other day to I was it a space or something. It was definitely something specifically about Burkina Faso, and they were
Yeah.
talking about how Trump has gone out of his way to actually go after Burkina Faso and to insult Ibrahim Traore, which is really interesting, as he's not like a huge Burkina Faso is not a major player. It was just very
No,
interesting. He was
the
insulting
issue
them
is
about the gold and stuff like that. So
the issue is him specifically.
yeah, of course.
It's the symbol of him. When he went to Russia for Victory Day, he was like a rock star. And
Well, you can't Thomas Sankara people anymore. You can't Patrice Lumumba people anymore.
they're
People are
trying
going to
to
find
though.
out.
They're trying to. I mean, they've had many assassinations attempts
Yep.
against them.
27 in like a 3-month span or something.
Yeah,
He's
so
like the new
it's
Fidel
insane.
Castro.
Like exploding cigars and all this
Yes,
other stuff.
the new Fidel Castro. He should actually be honored in a way.
It is, but it's a lot of pressure. I mean, he
Yeah.
like the roads that he's been building, the taking the gold mines, the effectively nationalizing them, saying, look, and yet, and to be honest, he has a point, right? Africa is one of the richest continents in the world, and yet poor. And as he makes this point of like, how do we reconcile these two things? How do we have this continent with all of these resources, and yet we're dirt poor? And a lot of it, one of the things that they pointed out was uranium going to France, for example. So these colonial countries set up these democratic, quote unquote, countries, but the democracy was almost there as a way to lock them into this kind of colonial rule. And so you break out of it almost in this Napoleonic way. And he starts saying, okay, I'm gonna nationalize the gold mines. We're gonna use the gold for the betterment of Burkina Faso and for the larger continent of Africa itself. You get other Sahel states, Niger, Mali, joining together saying, hey, we're gonna do something very similar for our own populations. Mm-hmm. And so you can imagine that Trump, AFRICOM, looks at that and says, that guy's a problem.
Yeah.
The guy's upsetting the apple cart. They're kicking out the French. They're kicking out the Americans. We don't like him doing that. What if that spreads? Which is why France was trying to get ECOWAS, other Africans, to attack the African countries. Like, it's astonishing. He has become this symbol of this kind of new Africa that he's trying to effectively propagate. And it is infectious. Some of the other countries in Africa have started to kick out the French also, even if they didn't have their own uprisings. My point is, if you put in Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traore in YouTube, that video will get demonetized. At least mine did.
I'm not going to experiment, but I believe you.
Mine did. I had this video with Kofi. Kofi was talking about it. There was nothing dramatic in that video. We weren't even talking about war. We weren't talking about anything other than the Russians sending commandos over in order to help Ibrahim Traore. They demonetized that video. And I'm sitting there like, what the fuck? How do you demonetize this video? I have some hardcore videos out there that weren't demonetized. And this is a video that demonetized? It's like, what the hell? And so I found myself, even when I was talking to, what is his name? It'll come to me yesterday. I was talking to him yesterday. When I first titled the video, demonetized. Okay. Unsafe, unmonetized, do it again. Named it again, demonetized. I had to keep playing around with the title of that video to get it to something that they would demonetize. That shit is aggravating. We're talking about effectively, because, when he was at the Victory Day celebration, he comes back and immediately, a day later, Al-Qaeda attacks Burkina Faso, kills like 100 people. And it's like, okay, that doesn't seem random to me. That doesn't seem like a coincidence, especially since America has worked with Al Qaeda. Hell, Donald Trump is shaking the hand of an ISIS leader as he takes over Syria. So we've had relationships with these people. I mean, look at what Obama was doing when he was effectively backing Al Qaeda and terrorists trying to overthrow the Syrian government. The U.S. military and the CIA was backing these groups. Hell, there were even times where these groups were fighting each other, one backed by CIA, one backed by the army. Libya, another good example, where we were using terrorists. Afghanistan, where we were using effectively the Mujahideen, meaning we've used these terrorist groups over and over the course of these years. And an argument is made, even in Africa, that France and the US were effectively there using terrorists that they were using as a justification for them being in those countries, which is part of the reason why they kicked them out in the first place, with this belief, okay, you're not helping us. You're actually a hindrance to us. And so now you have these terrorist groups that just so happen to attack when he has his day in the sunlight at the Victory Day celebration. Is it a coincidence? I am of the mind that it is not. I would imagine people in Africa of the mind that it is not. I'm sorry. This is a detour. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I'm just so annoyed by that. I hate it when they do that because it feels like this overarching God, machine that is like, we don't like that. And it's like, dude, get off my ass. It's hard enough. Doing this fucking job. Get off my ass. Okay. How far is Hungary going to go with this? Let's go back to the main.
Not far. They'll keep it to the level that Ukraine does. They'll let them dictate this. Hungary is kind of not very strong militarily, and current as well as in an alliance with Serbia. Yeah. So we'll see what happens. Hungary will need to rest their laurels or save up their energy for the actual time, because they're probably going to need it.
What do you mean by that? Explain.
I think the EU is going to take this as far as it can go. And if Hungary doesn't wind up in a confrontation via the EU, it'll wind up in one via Serbia, I would think.
Really?
Sure. Yeah.
Well, let's say NATO has also been trying to take it far with Russia, using Estonia to try to steal Russian ships.
Mm-hmm.
And they got a wake-up call when a Russian aircraft was about to bomb the shit out of that Estonian boat if it didn't leave that other ship alone. They are really pushing the envelope. And they are, for one, if that ship got bombed, Estonia couldn't have called Article 5 because Estonia was attacking that Russian ship in open water.
Yep.
So they were taking their lives into their own hands, which apparently they recognized. But there was a Polish aircraft out there also. So it wasn't Estonia by itself. This had to be something that NATO itself was doing.
Well, the politics have a lot of guts, but they don't get it from an authentic or organic place. It comes from standing behind the skirts of others. So in this case, it was Poland. Estonia is usually the most outspoken of the three Baltics, but all three are quite aggressive towards Russia. So I'm not shocked that Estonia did this. It's also much easier for the Baltics to do stuff to Russia than it would be for, say, one of the Scandinavian countries. Because if Russia retaliates against little Estonia, it's just little Estonia. What are you doing, big mean Russia? If it were Finland and Russia went after them, it would have all of this historical context, political context, and it would be a big brouhaha. But since it's little, stupid, silly Estonia that's no more populated than New York City, nobody's going to make a big deal, and they'll just write it off. I mean, it's a 6,000 person army. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. I don't think Finland was able to bleed the Russians once before. I don't think they have that capability.
No, they don't. But if it were them to go after a ship and Russia to retaliate, that would be very newsworthy and notable. But since it's Estonia, you're like,
yeah. I guess my feeling though is they don't need reality in this case. I mean, they have, how can I explain this? NATO has gone with an unreality for the last several years. Even, Russia with 150,000 people is going to take over all of Europe. Russia just wants all of Ukraine. Putin is just a bad man who is attacking Ukraine for no reason. NATO is purely a defensive organization. we're just loving light, and Russia keeps messing with us. Like, all of this stuff is unreality that they've worked with. Unreality scares me. And it scares me because it means that you don't need a rational basis for your activities and your behavior. So they could have said, we want Article 5. And the other nations might have said, Russia just attacked them for no reason. After all, that's the argument they're using in Ukraine right now. And this is a good gateway. What do you think about these negotiations? And I'm putting it in quotes. Even in the video, I have it in quotes.
They're not happening.
Right. Right.
I woke up and I was like, well, I'm going to go. Obviously, that was like the thing I was looking forward to the
Same
most
here.
this morning. I was like, great. You know, not that I'm like, I'm not, I don't, let me put it this way. I don't want peace at the cost of Russia not getting everything they want, but I don't want the war to continue. So obviously I was very excited for developments, and I'm coming to find out that Zelensky again is standing in the way of everything.
Yes.
As usual.
Yes. Because
the whole thing was suspect from the beginning, how he was like, okay, you just finished, or you just came off of 3 years of it being illegal for you to talk to Putin that you did yourself. Now you're insisting that you talk to him in Istanbul.
Personally, by the way. Personally.
Yeah, a NATO state. As when they said that, I was like, it's a trap. I was like, I'm probably being too paranoid, but I was like, why? Like, what are we
I didn't think it was a trap. I
don't like Turkey. I do not trust Turkey at all right now, and they are like a cornered wild animal. No offense meant.
So I thought Putin put Zelensky in somewhat of a trap. And let me explain why. And you give me your take why. When I think all of this is a propaganda exercise in diplomatic warfare. And so you get Europe coming out saying, we want a 30-day ceasefire. And you get Donald Trump on the phone agreeing with them, effectively being cornered to say, okay, I'll agree to your 30-day ceasefire. Then Putin comes out and says, well, I don't want a ceasefire. Let's just have talks in Istanbul. Let's just go back to Istanbul 2.0. And we will pick up where we left off with the realities on the ground, and it will be unconditional. So the ceasefire stuff, nonsense. The war continues. We're going to keep grinding away westward while we have these talks. And 2, we pick up where we left off, meaning from our framing and point of view, we are starting back with the Istanbul agreements that you had already agreed upon with the new realities on the ground for the 5 or the 4 additional areas that we're going with. Meaning they set a context for those talks that you are coming here to capitulate. Meaning your agreement is what you were agreeing to before with this additional stuff. We can have other conversations, but all things being equal, that's what it is. And if the conversation is just between Russia and Ukraine, well, there's no conversation. When Donald Trump was having, if you add Trump into a conversation and Trump tells him you have no cards, what Trump is telling him is, look, I can talk about sanctions. I can talk about business deals. I can talk about investments. I can talk about all of these things in addition to you, where at the very least, I may be able to get a deal with them that includes something for you. If you are having a conversation with them one-on-one, you got nothing. If you keep going, your military is going to collapse. So any deal that you make is going to be at your own detriment because you have no cards in this proposition. So when Russia's like, let's have direct talks, they're effectively saying, we're going back to the old conversation we were having before, where you were effectively agreeing to what we were putting out. Now, then you get Trump saying, I may come to the negotiations. You get Rubio, Kellogg, and Wickoff coming to the negotiations. Hell, Lindsey Graham is at the negotiations. You get all of these Western players at the negotiations. And the reality of it is none of these people want peace. I don't even think the Russians all that much want peace. I think they would accept it if they got what they wanted. But Zelensky can't do it. Like, meaning if Zelensky did that, as my other guest pointed out, Zelensky will be hanging from a flag post with them saying, Jewish traitor or something like that, because these guys are Nazis ultimately. So
probably would say Jewish traitor.
Yeah, they're racist, right? They accept Zelensky because he's effectively embodying the things that they want. But all things being equal, they hate the guy's guts. So, there is no room for negotiation. It sounds like what they're trying to do is to convince Trump that What Zelensky is trying to convince Trump is, hey, okay, I'm here. He didn't want to go. He didn't want to be in Istanbul to have these negotiations. And so the strongest position he could take is, well, I'm going to talk to Putin face to face. Well, that wasn't part of the bargain. Even before in the Istanbul agreements, they weren't talking face to face. You send your diplomatic team, they send their diplomatic team. The Ayatollah is not having a conversation with Trump. They have their diplomatic teams that are there to negotiate. And so Zelensky ends up having a conversation with Erdogan, blows off the morning negotiations, and there's a question about whether they're going to negotiate at all, and it's going to apparently depend upon whatever the conversation he has with Erdogan. So I found this to be a farce. I didn't take it as, look, from my point of view, Erdogan wants to be considered a statesman. So I didn't really think it was a trap in the context of anything with Turkey, if that makes sense. Give me your take on this. I understand why you don't trust Turkey. Erdogan.
I don't trust Turkey with Putin having a warrant. Period. I don't trust Turkey as a NATO state with Putin having a warrant at all. So that's that. I don't trust Turkey.
Are you saying Putin having a warrant?
Yeah.
I see what you mean. ICC warrant.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I see.
And Turkey's one that wants to curry favors with other states. They're much more wanting to ingratiate themselves with the West than the East. They would much rather if they were given a choice. So it felt like a trap. I'm being extreme probably and dramatic. But regardless, I knew it was pointless for him to go anyway. Zelensky is hemming and hawing and delaying this meeting so he doesn't have to go. So he doesn't have to meet with them. He's afraid to meet with them. So he meets with Erdogan. And then he's like, well, my plane's leaving at 4. So this has got to be really quick. And
but he knew he wasn't going to meet with Putin.
He's not meeting with anybody. And I think that
Lavrov.
Putin sent an actual message without even needing to negotiate. If you look at who Putin sent and you actually look at them, they were like hardliners, military men, people that negotiated in Syria. Like they weren't there to negotiate in the vein that Zelensky wants. So that was probably a lot of it. He maybe felt intimidated. It was a very large contingent of all Russian military and GRU operatives.
Yep. One was head of the GRU.
Mm-hmm. So there's that. He might have felt kind of intimidated. They weren't there to negotiate for peace in the sense that America or Zelensky thinks. They were there to negotiate a military peace. And they're not going to take all of these other, we're going to buy time. We're going to, it's a ceasefire for a little bit. No, they're not going to take all of that. So I actually was just looking at it while I was waiting to come on here, still waiting for them to meet. His meeting with Erdogan just finished, and we're waiting for Russia to release a statement. And then Zelensky goes home at 4 p.m. His flight takes off. So
it was always, like I said, propaganda. It was theater.
Yeah.
I mean,
oh yeah.
All of these. Do you think Trump realizes that? Like, Donald Trump, when he put out the tweet, in this rage, Zelensky was like, well, I'm not going to talk to Putin unless there's a 30-day ceasefire. And Trump was like, you better get your ass over there. And Trump pointed out, Putin doesn't want a 30-day ceasefire. He wants to end the war. Now, Trump seemed to be okay with that, right? That was Trump's position anyway. Go, and you can see where people stand. But he had to know that Zelensky doesn't want a deal, that Zelensky can't take a deal. This is kind of like Boris Johnson, when Boris Johnson was like, there was no circumstance where Zelensky could have signed or accepted the Minsk agreements. Meaning they knew in advance. The people who were backing Zelensky in that government was never going to allow him to accept a ceasefire. And so it seems like all of this is a propaganda exercise just to convince Trump that, hey, I'm open to this, even though he's not. And Putin puts it out there to say, hey, we're open to negotiations. Even though, all things being equal, I strongly suspect they want to accomplish what they need on the battlefield in order to force Ukraine into some level of surrender. Otherwise, how do you get denazification? How do you get recognition of the territories? Like, how do you get these things without kind of a formal surrender by the state of Ukraine, if that makes sense?
I'm not really sure. You'll just have to wait and see, I guess. You're not going to get a formal surrender from Ukraine while Zelensky is in office. So I don't know that you're going to get a formal surrender of Ukraine at all, or if that's even allowed.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure where.
What do you mean allowed?
Well, they're at the behest of the EU. like they need a plan. If they're going to make peace with Russia, they need a plan for what happens after that peace. And that means whoever is helping with that peace needs to peace. So, I mean,
see what you mean.
Ukraine's not going to rebuild itself. So other people are obviously involved in these peace talks and what the outcome will look like. Ukraine's also not going to rearm itself. So it will need help doing that. So again, those countries that are doing that will have to be on board.
Do you think they would even have, like, okay, maybe I'm more cynical on this. I am not of mind that these peace talks are good. And God, man, I think our positions are flipped. When we were first talking, I think I was more, I think I initially had the thing of, okay, I have a certain level of optimism.
No, I don't. They're not even going to happen. I don't even think Zelensky will talk to the people.
I'm saying I don't think this is going to be decided through peace talks at all.
No, it'll be decided militarily. And I think that was also a message that Putin sent with this delegation. How militarily stacked there was. I think there were 2 or 3 civilians in the whole group, and the rest was the military, showing like we're not here for political peace talks. This is military peace talks. You won't be rearming, and they can't get that guarantee out of Zelensky or the EU.
Yeah.
So it's just not going to happen.
It's like, we're here for your surrender. And these are the military guys that's going to accept it.
Exactly.
Oh, that's a good point. I was watching, and in fact, I think it was DD Geopolitics where I first saw the breakdown. Eventually, I saw it on TASS that was giving a breakdown to people, but I think I saw it on your channel first.
Mm-hmm.
Again, for people, DD Geopolitics is fantastic. You guys come out. The information is constantly coming out over the course of the day. In fact, I just saw them breaking up Erdogan and Zelensky having a 3-hour conversation.
Mm-hmm. So he had 3 hours to meet with Erdogan, but he won't have time for the Russian delegation. Like he's playing games too.
Yeah.
Not very good because they're insulting. But he's playing games too. He thinks that they're power plays. They're not. They're actually just
He doesn't need to be there for the negotiation. That's the part that I don't quite get. Like he's like, I'm going to Istanbul. Okay, why? What? What are you doing there? Lavrov is not even there, right?
Exactly.
Like, he didn't send his main diplomat.
Exactly.
So you just needed to send your team. You didn't need to go.
He did that on purpose as a show, but it didn't really work out the way that he wanted it to. He actually looks stupider.
The question is, what is Trump going to do?
Wash his hands of it. They said that they would be washing their hands of it. They're not involved in mediation anymore.
That's what he said. And by the way, they did send their team. They sent Kellogg, Rubio, and Witkoff.
I mean, that's not.
Witkoff was on negotiation.
But they're not taking the mediator position. Turkey took the mediator position, which is exactly what the United States would say.
I see what you mean.
I think a week ago, or 2 weeks ago.
Do you think he's got to now? Even if he walks, is that a full walk away?
No, they still have the mineral deal that they signed,
which is a Lend-Lease agreement.
Yeah.
And by the way, we don't even know. Have you gotten any information on the other 2 pages of that mineral deal? Because I haven't seen them yet. And apparently there's some heavy shit in those other 2 pages.
Really? I did a thread on the recent trip of his sons to the Middle East, and it seems that his trip to the Middle East is just a follow-up of that. It's just private business deals and real estate. It's really funny, and people are getting very excited over this Middle East trip. I sat down to start researching it because I was like, all right, let me see what the Middle East trip and what do we get out of it. And I was like, going, where did he go? Who did he meet with? What deals were signed? And then I'm like, none of these deals are for like America.
Yeah,
they're for some Americans that he knows and likes, but they're not like for America. They're like, oh, it's gonna bring jobs to the United States. Even if it did in a perfect world, it would be like less, maybe in the 5 digits at most, and it wouldn't be permanent. It would be temporary just to fill those contracts, and then that would be it. But that's not even how it's going. It was all just more private deals to buttress up the real estate and the AI and crypto deals that were already in place. So really, a lot of pomp and circumstance for like I like to say, all no bread and all circus. That's what it was. All circus. It was just I guess like the biggest one that would help America would be the Boeing contract, which
Yeah.
I mean, my brother in Christ, we can't get Boeing to build Air Force One on time and on budget. You want $142 billion worth of planes from them? Do you think that's smart? This isn't going to happen.
Bribery. It's just bribery.
Yeah, this isn't going to
It's just
happen.
bribery.
And
Like,
for the Qataris, 142 billion is like chump change.
yeah.
So it doesn't get you anything with the Qataris either. You don't have any leverage over them. All they have is money. So, I mean, that's you having their money does not, they're like, we'll just get more out of the ground. Like literally, like they're the richest country, one of the richest countries in the world, if not the richest still. They were the richest per capita not too long ago. But nothing is what it seems with the Middle East trip. And now we're ending up in Abu Dhabi, which Abu Dhabi, as people would know, as a secondary headquarters for the Trump crypto fund, the WLF. The UAE, the Emiratis out of Abu Dhabi invested $2 billion into Trump's private crypto venture.
That's a scam. God, that's such a scam.
So
Trump uses the U.S. government first time to invest in crypto, a stable coin.
Mm-hmm.
And then he comes up with his own crypto venture with his kids running around getting all of this investment into this fund. Now, they screamed to high heaven about Hunter Biden doing something very similar with the Biden name, where effectively it's like, I'm sitting here with my father and you better give me $20 million or else.
Sorry, but it's not even close to Burisma.
It's not even close. This is even worse.
Surpasses Burisma tenfold. Like, there are multiple countries, multiple companies. This is not a Don Trump Jr. and he has a deal with Dar Global in Qatar. No, they've got to deal with Dar Global. They've got to deal with the QIA, which is ran by the Qatari state. They have deals inside of UAE. They have deals with another Saudi real estate firm. They have deals everywhere. And we're not talking 20 million. The deal in Qatar alone for the golf course is 5 billion. That's just the golf course, not the rest of it. So, I mean, we're not talking chump change here. This is huge private interest. Huge private interest. Go look at the list. I believe it was on the Hill. I also, I might have some of it in front of me. The list of people who went on the trip with Trump. I was doing this last night and pulling up the notes. Let me see if I have it.
I know it was Musk.
Alex Karp went. CEOs from Google, Amazon, Uber, just a parade of CEOs. Insanity. Insane, the people that went along on this trip.
So what is the goal here? To get those companies into the Middle East? So you have an Uber in the Middle East?
Don't forget, now I'm giving you a sneak peek for my show on Sunday, but there are so many members of the Trump admin that have very suspicious ties to Qatar. Pam Bondi was a lobbyist for Qatar. Kash Patel also worked in Qatar security. Susie Wiles was also a lobbyist for Qatar. Jared Kushner has ties to Qatar. Steve Witkoff and his sons have huge ties to Qatar.
Really?
Steve Witkoff was bailed out by Qatar for $600 million with his real estate company. And of course, we have the Trump and the Trump sons. There are huge, the Trump family is very ingratiated, or the Trump admin is very ingratiated. We have two factions. It's very interesting because we have the old guard who are very ingratiated to your AIPACs and your Israel. And then you have your new guard that is in this new money, this Saudi, UAE, Qatari money. And so that's where these two are butting heads. And you can see it now. It's kind of coming to fruition for me as we watch him sort of push back on Israel and who freaks out and who's kind of like, well, let's go. I mean, these people brokered the deal for the $400 million plane. That was Pam Bondi and Witkoff that brokered that deal for that plane. And Pam Bondi had to sign off on it because she's the country's attorney general. So that's what's happening.
So, oh God, this is super interesting. So do you believe that the Trump, I mean, I have been, because I've been confused by some of this stuff. And, you know, when I get confused, I try to break it down to the audience my confusion and why.
I think you're
And
confused because of how stupid and like base level it is, right? I wouldn't understand why somebody would want to ingratiate with themselves with Qatar, UAE,
yeah,
and Saudi because I don't value the same things that these countries do. But you put yourself into Trump's shoes and Trump's
right.
mindset. He gets off that plane and he sees skyscrapers and beautiful white marble mosques. He's like, I want that. Gold-plated toilets, I want that. This is prosperity. This is it, because that's what he thinks prosperity is. All that gaudiness, all that gauche, all that camp, all that nonsense. That is Trump. He loves that. I would have paid to be there to see when he first went to the to UAE and went to Dubai. He
Yeah.
probably got off the plane like this
Look,
is
I would
the
tell you,
promised land, and it's really like a
Dubai
hellhole
is
in the Middle East.
gorgeous, except for the slaves that are
I
building it.
hate Dubai because that's all I can feel while I'm there is like this horrible heavy energy. Like when you see stuff like that, you know, and you know inherently that somebody's suffering behind this because
And
that's
behind
how
the
it has to be.
scenes, you can see this kind of the people shuffling behind that are effectively almost quote unquote slaves.
Yeah,
that are
everybody says the
building.
service in Dubai is top
Yeah,
notch. Yeah, because they'll get
yeah,
abused if they don't give you good service.
yeah. I nearly got arrested in Dubai. There was that.
But they love that. I think you and I have talked about this. They want stuff like that. They want indentured servitude. They like that. They're setting up conditions for that in El Salvador. They're doing that in the Maldives. Maldives has indentured servitude for the most part. I'm being a little bit hyperbolic because they do get paid, but
Yeah.
it's nothing. And same thing with UAE and same thing with Saudi and Qatar. Interestingly, and now I'm really giving you a sneak preview. Susie Wiles. And now this is going to take you down maybe a rabbit hole, but Susie
Uh-oh.
Wiles and Pam Bondi both worked on Qatar to whitewash their human trafficking offenses while they were building for the World Cup.
Are you serious?
Don't forget, Pam Bondi was also the Attorney General while Epstein was gallivanting around Florida, and now she's delaying the Epstein file. So just keep all of that in the back of your mind as you're watching these people, because that's what they were hired to do. They were hired as lobbyists to make sure that the funding kept going for the World Cup and that the human rights violations that were coming out were whitewashed.
All right.
The human
I
trafficking.
want you to let's put a circle around that. And I want to connect that circle to Trump and Israel.
I will do my best.
All right. So my confusion has been that all of these media reports have been coming out saying there's a rift between Trump and Netanyahu. Oh my God, Trump and Netanyahu seems to be at odds. Oh, Trump is, and to be fair to the media reports, you did see a few things, right? There were a few, let's say, stones down that road. You get Trump bailing out from the Houthis when the Houthis effectively
They won.
repudiates. Yeah, Trump basically capitulated. His pain threshold was much less than you would think Big Papa's pain threshold would be. They nearly shoot a plane out the sky. They nearly hit the tanker. And the last thing you want is an aircraft carrier going down on your watch, right? So Trump is like, okay, just don't attack us. We want to attack you. F Israel. If you need to attack them, you can do that. And they've still been firing missiles. Apparently another one hit Ben Gurion Airport.
And they took out another MQ-9.
And
took
took
out another drone.
MQ-9.
You said we were going to get out of the airspace, Trump.
Come on, Trump lies as easily as he breathes, right? All right, so you get that part. Then you get Witkoff talking to hostage families saying, hey, your POW son that was over here killing Palestinians, the reason that he's still in captivity is because of Israel. Netanyahu doesn't want to end the war. He has no war aims, but he keeps the war going. It's his fault. Okay, that's astonishing. Joe Biden would have never done that. Joe Biden couldn't even get the words out to say something like that. Nevertheless, he was willing to effectively say something that most Israelis even believe at this point. All right, so there's that. Then there's talk about him sidelining Israel to try to make a deal with Hamas directly. Now, apparently Israel didn't even know that Donald Trump was talking to Hamas about the American POW. They found out through Israeli intelligence. So there's talk about groups like AIPAC being sidelined and being boxed out of the decision-making from the Trump administration. Now, I am very skeptical of this, or at the very least, he may have issues with Netanyahu, but the relationship between Israel and the United States hasn't gone anywhere. It's still
Not really, no.
stable, right?
Yeah.
So how does all of this influence from the Qataris, the money coming from the Saudis, how does all of that, or does it have an effect on what seems to be, let's say, a contradictory relationship with the US and Israel? Or is there any contradiction in these two things?
Well, maybe we're finding out that the contradiction actually comes from Bibi
Oh, Jesus
and
Christ.
himself.
It's 10:16. I'm sorry. I'll let you finish this and I'll let you go. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
that's
I keep
okay.
moving.
No, I think that what they're trying to say is, look, we can get all of these guys on board. The UAE's good, Saudi, Qatar, all these people are on board. It's you, baby. It's you. You've got to go. Like, I mean, look, this is Jared Kushner's peace plan, right? Everybody gets on board the Abraham Accords.
Yeah.
The only people that haven't are Qatar and Saudi. Qatar won't for now because of Hamas, and Saudi won't because it was hinging on the Palestinian state. Now
Right.
it's not. So this is actually like Trump can probably maneuver in a way and be like, I've gotten them to make concessions and to invest in the United States. And you're the one who's actually standing in the way of all of this. So you've
Wait,
got
you're
to
saying
go.
Saudis gave up this notion of a Palestinian state?
I'm not saying that they gave up entirely, but it's off the table. The point of the Abraham Accords is to decouple
Right.
normalization from Palestinian state. So if they get Saudi and Qatar to sign on to these Abraham Accords for the foreseeable future, it's over. This idea of a Palestinian state is over because who else will be pressuring Israel for it? Nobody with any leverage except for maybe the Europeans who aren't going to do anything about it.
They're not going to do anything. Yeah. From my understanding, Trump dropped this demand from the United States that Saudi Arabia recognizes Israel. That was one of the other stones. Saying,
Right.
hey, you can get your nuclear power. No issue. You don't have to deal with Israel. Again, Israel's like, what the F?
Right. That's outside of the Abraham Accords still. But yes,
Yeah.
the goal right now for the Trump administration, and especially the Kushners, is to get Saudi and Qatar into the Abraham Accords because it helps with business. It's big time helps with business. And that's what they're worried about. They're establishing their legacy.
Yeah.
You could really tell if you watch what the Trump sons are doing and Kushner's doing, they're establishing a Trump legacy that if it all goes according to their plan, we'll be here forever. We're talking golf courses across the Gulf. We're talking towers in the Balkans. I mean, they're everywhere. These guys are everywhere. Towers in Southeast Asia. They're everywhere.
Wow.
And everybody said they're isolationists. These people are globalists.
Yeah.
They don't want any borders.
Not so much. They just want them under their terms. Sarah, thank you for the preview. Oh, thank you for the preview. It's just fascinating. Don't just take me down a rabbit hole.
There will be more.
No.
I'm sure I'll be back down in the rabbit hole today. But yeah, I was there for like 6 hours yesterday, and I was like, "What?" So it's just really interesting how intertwined they are with Qatar.
You do an amazing job.
Thanks.
You really do. I like I said, DD Geopolitics comes up all the time, and it really informs my point of view about what's taking place, like the tip of the spear news about what's in this issue, and it gives you something where you can kind of go and research to figure out, okay, what are more details associated with it? It's really good snapshots. Just for the audience to know, definitely check them out. They are fantastic. You guys have a YouTube channel also, correct?
Yes, and we'll be live today in 5 hours. So join us today if you guys have time, and then again on Sunday, same time, noon Pacific.
3 p.m.
Yep.
Sarah Bils.
Thank you so much, Jamarl. Going back to bed.
I'm wide awake. Like people used to look there. To be fair, when you have a morning show, there are some days where you are just dragging ass. I'm an insomniac, so sometimes I don't sleep well. But there are far fewer in between than people realize. And I think it's me just looking at the camera. And some people's like, hey, why don't you just transfer the camera off of you? That way you're not just staring at the camera when the other person is talking. It's like, okay, maybe that's a better idea. I don't know what it is. Sometimes when I'm looking down and I'm writing, and they're like, I think he's falling asleep. Dude, I'm just writing.
I don't know how you do it. 3.5 hours, I'd be asleep. I'd be done. Toast.
Usually it's easy when you're interested in the topics and we have really good guests. Today was easy. I had fascinating guests the entire time. So today was easy. There are days where it drags, where you're like, see, on Fault Lines, I always had a co-host. And so worst come to worst, sometimes your co-host will ask something interesting that you just don't think of because different people, different points of view. Whereas on this one, if it's dragging, then you just have to make it through. And sometimes that can get difficult. But usually, if it's good guests, good topics, it goes by fast. Today went by very fast, which is why I didn't notice that it was after 10 o'clock.
That's okay.
Sarah,
Have a
thank you.
good one. I'll see
Sarah
you next
Bils.
week, probably.
Yes, if you're open to it, I
I'm
don't mind
open
having you
to
on
it. Just
weekly.
shoot me a text and have a good weekend, Jamarl.
Thank you. Sarah Bils, independent journalist, U.S. Navy veteran, and co-founder of DD Geopolitics. You have a good one. You okay?
You too.
Be safe. All right. We have come to the end. We have come to the, oh, geez, we have a lot of super chats. All right. Let's go into chats. Lab 66, McCurris is not fit to tie the shoelaces of Joe. McCurris, Alexander McCurris is astonishingly good. Alexander McCurris is astonishingly good. The man walks on water from my point of view. He's a person. And so, of course, there are things where I think he can get wrong. But his breakdowns, unparalleled. Unparalleled. He is so good at this. We were so fortunate to have him on Fault Lines when he used to come on. His knowledge of the subject matter, his dedication to it, man is awesome. The man is awesome. He is my utmost respect. I would love to have him on the show. After a while, he stopped coming on Fault Lines, but the man is fantastic. If anybody wants a fantastic breakdown of what is taking place on the battlefield, what is taking place in regards to world affairs, especially with this kind of British gravitas added to it, there's a poshness in the way that he talks about it. Can't get much better than Alexander McCurris. He's damn good. I have zero complaints. The man is fantastic. Sir Mike Salat, have you seen Trump's demented Biden moment? Go watch him sign the weapons deal. There was one moment where I know Trump was falling asleep. I don't know if it's that. The weapons deal. You mean with Saudi Arabia? I'll go check it out. Oh, when he gets up and he doesn't know which way to go, or he goes into the wrong location and he kind of wanders about. I did see that. I don't have the video cut, but I did see it. Flying Boar. Putin showed weakness in 2018 when they had Jelani cornered and Putin backed off and Trump made us. Yes. The U.S. effectively said something to the effect that they would lose their minds if the terrorists in Idlib were attacked. And in retrospect, they should have went in because the entirety of Syria has been destroyed at this point, and those minority communities are being slaughtered. The U.S. was effectively the Air Force of terrorists. No bullshit, full stop. And whereas even the United Nations pointed out that there were 30 or 40,000 terrorists in Idlib, they allowed Turkey to con them into this notion of, hey, we'll have negotiations. We'll talk about it. We'll deal with it. Okay, well, instead, you created this kind of haven for terrorists that just exploded with a bomb of terrorists come running out, with Syrian forces being paid off in some respects, with Iranians being sidelined. I mean, there was a lot of, let's say, intrigue taking place behind the scenes that got the Syrian army either in disarray or, for that matter, paid off. So, look, Sir Baxlet, you're not entirely wrong. But keep in mind, it wasn't just Russia. It was Russia, Syria, Iran, Hezbollah. Like, it was multi-group force that beat back the terrorists, beat back ISIS in that. And obviously, the U.S. was helping the terrorists in Idlib. So, yeah, you're not wrong. Flying Boar, what is Tran supposed to do now since Trump recognized Jelani? Oh, that is a damn good question. He not just recognized Jelani, shook hands with Jelani, got rid of sanctions on Syria. And by the way, like Esteban pointed out, I don't hate the fact that they got rid of sanctions on Syria. I just think they should have never put them on in the first place. It's that. You got them on because you were using them in order to overthrow that government and weaken that government. And now that the jihadi president has taken over, now we can remove them. Now it's perfectly okay. Everything is great. He's a good man with a strong history. Yeah, strong history of chopping the heads off Americans with the exact hand that you were shaking his hands with. Scott Ritter defended Trump last month. What does he have to say now? Flying boar? You would have to ask Scott Ritter. You'd have to ask Scott Ritter. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I think if Russia is being very kind to Trump and Russian media, be it on RT or Sputnik, because they think Trump is going to end the war, then I think Ritter will be very kind to Trump in his assessments and may form his opinion around their point of view of Trump and those topics. So at that point, he would be less hostile to Israel. He would change his position, be more hostile towards Hamas. He will come up with an argument as for why Iran should capitulate using a Trumpian point of view of Trump is not just going to bomb him in the way that Trump said, but he's also going to use nukes. He's going to take it up a notch. Now that the negotiations seem to be falling apart, I would imagine that he's going to be more hostile towards Trump because the negotiations are falling apart. In this case, it sounds like he's blaming Rubio, even though Rubio is not president of the United States. Now, an argument can be made that Donald Trump doesn't know anything about foreign policy. And the people who are around Trump, that Trump hired, by the way, are giving him advice that is not necessarily on the up and up, either in the sense of, hey, the Russians will give you this, just keep pushing. Or, hey, the Iranians will give you this, you just got to keep pushing and push hard enough. And Trump may find himself in a war because he's getting ridiculous advice. But the same token, Donald Trump hired those people. People are policy. You hire people because you want that particular point of view, and you want to go in a particular direction. Trump hired those people. Trump is president. Can we stop acting like with this nonsense that it's somebody else's fault? In 2 administrations, Donald Trump hired people that were neocons. And it's not like you're hiring a neocon and you're like, oh my God, I'm shocked that he's a neocon. How are you shocked that Rubio is Rubio? The shocking part will be that you're shocked, right? It's not like he wasn't in Congress. It's not like he hasn't espoused certain positions. He's a Cuban from Florida that is rabidly anti-Russian. So, but from my understanding, though, it didn't seem like Rubio was the main thrust in these negotiations. It seemed like it was Kellogg's plan, or Wickoff was there. And there might have been fights within the context of the administration about which direction you want to go. But it sounds like they went with Kellogg's plan. But I don't know. Maybe Ritter knows something I don't. And I don't doubt that he might. Who knows? I don't know. Laugh 66. I have many household chores to do. I procrastinate. I would like Jamal and followers to give me advice. Is there an app for that? By the way, Jamal is kind to invite a normie like Daniel Lazare on the show. Daniel Lazare is not a normie. Daniel's awesome. Look, we have to get beyond this thing that everyone is going to have their exact point of view. You can have people who are in the same family who deviate in their point of view, despite the fact that they're in the same family. For example, Daniel Lazare is an anti-Zionist. Daniel Lazare has been against these wars for God knows how long. And if you notice, when him and I are having a conversation, it's not that we don't agree on what reality is. We do. We disagree on steps to take. For example, we may have a conversation about, let's say, Russia and Ukraine. And I may point out, okay, well, what do you want Putin to do in this case? Especially since he's been surrounded. Lazare would say, you're right. You're right. Even though you may have a knee-jerk feeling against an invasion. Same thing with what's taking place in Israel and Palestine right now. We both would agree what Israel has been doing is ghastly. This is an open-air ghetto in one sense. This is a apartheid state in another. Okay, agreement. Disagreement. He would agree in the sense of being anti-Zionist. I am an anti-Zionist. Agreed. And then you say, okay, but what do you do? Now that gets more interesting. You agree on reality, so it's not that. The catch becomes, what do you do? Now, in my case, my thought is viscerally resistance, because this is outrageous about what's happening. By the same token, if that was Putin's point of view, we may be in a third world war right now. If it was taking my mind and my knee-jerk feel of it, right? A lot of people criticize Putin for not being strong enough and brutal in regards to the way he's prosecuted the war. But again, he's had other concerns. And his emotions getting in the way would be a hindrance to him prosecuting a war. If he can win this war without starting a larger third war, then he was right. Lazare's point is, dude, 100,000 people, if not more, 200,000 have been slaughtered, 2/3 of which are women and children. And if that's the outcome, was the action correct? Okay, that's a point of view. That point of view is not negative. It's a point of view. People within the same context and within the same basket of agreement can still come away with different points of view. That doesn't make them bad, evil, negative, or anything else. It's just different points of view. I don't know. Got to get past that shit. I remember when Dora was going after people who were in the same sandbox. And it's like, okay, this is just fucking gross. Like, if Sanders is running, for example, and you get somebody like Ryan Grimm or what is the guy's name? I can't think of the guy's name. He writes, I think, a Lever magazine. Okay, 90% of the stuff you guys agree on, and you get to the 10%, and you get demagogues who are attacking people because they don't agree with your 10%. Okay, that's not really helpful, right? At least I don't think it is. This show is not an echo chamber. There will be plenty of people in the show that disagree with me on all sorts of shit. That's fine. Just is what it is. And by the way, I'm not saying you're saying that, by the way. I'm not, just to be clear, I'm not saying that that's the point of view you're taking. I guess that's where my mind went. I don't think he's a normie. He's an author. He's written several books. A brilliant thinker, well-versed on issues from America to Europe. I mean, for God's sake, I didn't tell him. I mean, we were only supposed to talk about the Ukraine, not the Ukraine thing, the Estonia thing. Dave Lazare was able to talk about a breadth of stuff just off the top of his head. He's damn good guess. Damn good guess. I'm privileged to have him. Pink Rose, super sticker. Thank you, Pink Rose. Last 66. Why do you have mainstream media brainwashed person like Daniel on? Are there better guests around? Why do you think he's mainstream media brainwashed? Okay, so I was right. My original commentary was correct. My original commentary was correct. He's not brainwashed. He just has a different point of view. Like, why does that bother you? I don't get why that bothers you. Auntie Ann, Hamas didn't expect IDF to use Apaches to firebomb kibbutz. And when Netanyahu allowed October 7th to happen, Netanyahu started this war and kept it going to avoid prison. So Auntie Ann, that is a point of view, right? Egyptian intelligence, just to fill us out. Egyptian intelligence told Netanyahu Hamas is planning something, meaning they had already warned him that something was going to take place. Now, one argument is, well, he didn't realize it was going to be that extent. By the same token, Hamas had said, we didn't realize it was going to be that successful, meaning we didn't realize we were going to be able to attack the military installations in the way that we did and get the hostages in order to trade. Nor do I think they understood the scope of that violence and that evil response. On some level, they may have. And from their point of view, and I've heard them make this argument, that our blood on some level is part of the argument that we're making against Israel. And you're right, Netanyahu's kept this war going to keep it from going to prison. You're perfectly correct. And by the way, when they did polling in Israel, they also believed that Netanyahu is purposefully allowing the hostages to stay in captivity, or the POWs, in some cases, hostages and others, to stay in captivity so he can stay in power and he can maintain a power base. So again, you're right on that. Agree with you on that. I don't know. Well, I can't speak for anybody else. I am astonished by the scale of violence. Astonished by it. I've never seen anything like it. And I don't think we've seen anything like it in our lifetime. At least I'm, 47, going on 48. I've never seen anything like it. Nor would I have thought that the world would sit by and watch. And not watch like in the Holocaust, but watch where you turn on social media and here's a child being shot. Here's a person being thrown off of a cliff. Here's a guy being gang raped in prison. Here's the Israeli media saying this is okay in a public polling. Here's human shields being used. Here's another woman being killed. Here's a journalist being bombed. Here's a hospital being hit. Here's a UN building being destroyed. Here's a school being destroyed. Here's an entire block being blown up. Here's Israel justifying destroying an entire apartment complex, killing like 50 people in order to get one. And to see it day in and day out for nearly 2 years. That is a different animal. Like that is a level of evil that we have not just watched, but our tax dollars have paid for to the tune of 70 and 80%. It would be impossible for them to do it if it wasn't for us paying for it and giving them the weapons and the bombs and the bullets and the political support. We were just at the ICJ arguing that Israel has the right to starve 2.2 million human beings. I just watched before I came on the show, 30 kids, I believe it was 30, die of starvation. Sky News didn't want to say starvation. They just said malnutrition. They died of starvation. They were starved to death. I don't know if Hamas, in their minds, conceived of that level of violence. I don't even think Israel conceived that the U.S. would have allowed them to go that far. At least in the background reports, they were shocked that Joe Biden allowed them to continue on for this long and to kill this many people and to create this much havoc. And with the Trump administration, it seems that their thing is, we got in Trump. Let's get it all done now. Let's take Gaza. Let's take the West Bank. Let's do it right now. Trump is going to let us do it. Let's do it. If we can get Iran, let's even try to get Iran. If Trump is stupid enough to allow us to do it, we're going to do it all. We have the president for 4 years. We have time. That's what it seems like. It's the scale of violence that is just shocking. It just shocks the conscience. So, Auntie Ann, yeah, I agree with you. Agreed. Totally agree. Bro, if you became a YouTuber, you would never, a VTuber, you would never have to get dressed for the show, and you maybe wouldn't even have to get out of bed. What the hell is a VTuber? I don't know what a VTuber is. I'm okay with getting dressed for the show. When I did my radio show, I didn't get dressed because on radio you come in, Malik used to come in like flip-flops. Well, I used to come in flip-flops pretty much all the time too. No, the way I started getting dressed was because when I started the new iteration of the morning show, my thought was, for the first show, I'm going to wear a suit. It's my first day. I'm going to come in with the best foot forward, and that entire week was shit. Everything went wrong. Sound was wrong. Video was wrong. I couldn't get the things right. And so then I kept saying, okay, I'm going to wear a suit when I finally get the show right. But when the show goes wrong for like 2 weeks, and you're wearing a suit for like 2 weeks because you're trying to get it right, at a certain point, you're like, you know what? I kind of like being in the suit. I feel like you're doing something. I don't know. It grew on me. I got used to it. But RJ, thank you. I appreciate it. I do appreciate it. Matthew, do you think the USA will go into Ukraine? No, I do not. I do not. It depends on the president. If it was Kamala Harris, maybe. She's incompetent. Trump is incompetent also, but that would be such. MAGA would be against it. Just like MAGA wants him to end the war now. I mean, if you're looking at Marjorie Taylor Greene, if you're looking at Rand Paul, if you're looking at Steve Bannon, these people are like, walk the fuck away. We're not putting any more money into Ukraine, nor should we. I don't even care if you do investigations, walk the fuck away. That's their point of view. And so if I'm looking at, who I think is kind of the bellwether of MAGA, they seem to be against it. Donald Trump seems to want to end it, and they seem to want to turn it over to Europe. Now, would Europe go into Ukraine? Would they be stupid enough to do it? Okay, well, they don't even have, they may put a trigger force in order to trigger a large response. But Russia's made it clear, if you come into Ukraine, you're fair game. Full stop. And I don't get the sense that they're fucking around at this point. Keep in mind, they have been killing and dying for 3 years, and they've attributed that to Europe and to the United States. They have very little patience for the nonsense that Europe is doing. Europe has no hard power in this process. And the moment that the US pulls out, the war ends. Ukraine may be able to last for another few months, but they will collapse on its own weight. So I think it would be a shocking thing if Trump put the US in. I don't believe he would do it. But who knows? Trump is unpredictable. He, again, lies as easily as he breathes. Yeah, I don't know. Sanctions, yes, probably. Will he remove the sanctions? Probably not. Will they come to a peace deal? No time soon. Not until the Ukrainian military is weakened to the point where they're about to collapse. And even then, they may not do a peace deal. I don't think Europe even cares about a peace deal. I think what they care about is feeding Ukrainians to the Russian military. Just feed them into a wood chipper at this point. Russia is moving inexorably forward. You can see it on the maps. You can look at the military summary channel. You can look at, they're getting weaker and weaker. It's not a stalemate. It's not even close to a stalemate. If it was a stalemate, Ukraine would still be in Kursk. They lost 70,000 people in Kursk. It was some of their best people. Russia's in Sumy at this point. They've taken, oh God, I can't think of, I'm not even going to try to say the name of it. This is a very long word. But you can see the villages that they're taking day by day, by day, by day. And this drone warfare stuff, yes, it is a revolution in warfare. But you can't use drones in lieu of human beings. It doesn't work that way. So, no, I don't think we're going in. Lord knows I hope not. That's the end of the world if we do. It's the end of the world if we do. And I think that is all of them. Guys, I want to give a shout out to all of you. Yeah, I'm still alive. Ridiculous, still alive. It went along with Sarah. Guys, I want to thank all of you. I'm like Fetterman, I know that fat slob. Can't stand an asshole. No, guys, thank all of you. I really do appreciate it. We have a damn good show for you tomorrow, by the way. Laith Maruth is going to be here. I have a new guest that was recommended by Colonel Wilkerson. He is a military guy. That should be a fascinating interview. I saw him in an interview with, it wasn't Tucker. It was somebody else. But I was riveted. It might have been Napolitano. I think it was Judge Napolitano. And I sat there riveted the entire interview. Just, the man was fascinating. So he's going to be on tomorrow also. There's somebody else. Dimitri Lascaris. Oh, show's booked. I make it one more person, but the show's basically booked. Dimitri Lascaris is also going to be it. Tomorrow's going to be a power show also. Today was a fantastic show. Today was a fantastic show. I was riveted by all my guests. Patrick Henningsen. He knocked that shit out the park. Now I need to figure out what to name it. That's the issue. I need to figure out what to call it. Titles are hard. And believe it or not, titles take me most of the day to figure out. I struggle with titles because if you fuck it up, nobody's going to watch. You have to get it right. It has to be honest. And see, for me, as a software engineer, we used to just say, name it what it is. Like, call it exactly what it does if you're naming a program. And so I name my videos basically exactly what's in the video. That doesn't work. You have to, it has to be honest, but it has to be honest in a certain sort of way, if that makes sense. As a peak interest, as the, yeah, I just struggle with it. Wilkerson got so badass. Yeah, Wilkerson has been fantastic, by the way. Wilkerson has been fantastic. All right, I'm going to end this. I'm going to say like, I'm going to say share. The phrase don't need to mention it twice. You do it in the summary. All right, I'm going to end this. I'm going to say like, I'm going to say share, I'm going to say subscribe. You can always support PayPal, Patreon, Super Chat, Buy Me a Coffee is now a thing. That's the new thing that's out. And I want to thank all of you. As I was mentioning yesterday, I got an award. It was out the blue. It came yesterday. It is called, I want to get it right, the name correct. The Serena Shim Award for uncompromising integrity in journalism. Again, I think that's, I deeply appreciate it. It's just, it's so big. And what I mean by big, it's the person who's named after was effectively murdered doing her job in journalism. That is big, right? Like, for me, I don't see myself in those terms. I'm a guy who does the news. And I try to add context. I try to make it make sense. I try to give you an honest assessment. But yeah, it's just so big. RJ Raymond, look, all I'm saying is I think about how today's show would have been even more amazing if you were a cartoon. What? 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 Dude, you got to give me, I'm going to send you my address. Send me to some of that shit that you own. You got to hook me up. You got to hook me up. Just hook me up, man. Just hook me up. Just hook me up. Just ship it in the mail. That's all. Ship it in the mail. All right. What it says, I know some VTubers spent upwards of $10,000 on their model and rigging. Yeah, I don't have money like that. I'm barely scraping by. I'm just trying to do the news. All right, guys. You all have a fantastic evening, okay? And I'll see you guys bright and early in the morning. Be safe. Have a good one. Jamal Thomas Morning Show, episode 156. We have been in this sacred union 156 times. Whew. Signing off. Have a good one all.